The boardroom fell silent as Ava Sinclair's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You want me to choose between my company and the man I love? Then watch me burn this entire empire down before I let you destroy him. Across the table, Daniel Cross stood frozen, his daughter's future hanging by a thread, while the woman he'd tried so hard not to fall for laid her billion-dollar kingdom on the line. This is the story of two people who risked everything when the world demanded they risk nothing. If you're watching, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights hummed in the executive hallway of Sinclair Technologies, casting sterile white across marble floors that cost more than most people's houses. Daniel Cross kept his eyes on those floors as he walked, counting tiles like he'd been doing for 3 months now. 32 tiles from the elevator to the corner office, 14 from the corner to the executive suite. Numbers were safe. Numbers didn't get you fired. Daniel? He stopped walking but didn't look up. Her voice always did that to him, made his chest tight and his thoughts scattered. Daniel, I'm talking to you. Ava Sinclair stood in her office doorway, arms crossed, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She was younger than he'd expected when he first started working here, only 30, though you'd never know it from the way she commanded a room. Her dark hair was pulled back in that severe bun she always wore for board meetings, and her expression was the one she used when someone had made a mistake on a quarterly report. Ms. Sinclair. He nodded once, still studying the expensive tile. Look at me. He couldn't. That was the whole problem. Is there something I should know about? Her voice had an edge now. Have I done something to offend you? No, ma'am. Then why the hell won't you look at me? Well, Daniel's jaw tightened. Sophie had a field trip next week. New backpack, permission slip, $20 for lunch. Rent was due in 12 days. His daughter's stability depended on this job, on him not screwing this up, on him being the kind of father who made smart decisions instead of stupid ones. I should get back to work, he said. Daniel, excuse me, Miss Sinclair. He walked away before she could say anything else, counting tiles again. 32 back to the elevator. His hands were shaking when he pressed the button for the 4th floor. In his cubicle, Daniel pulled up the monthly operations report and stared at numbers that refused to make sense. The cursor blinked on the screen. Outside his window, Seattle rain hammered against glass. Dude, you look like hell. Marcus leaned against the cubicle wall, holding 2 cups of coffee that smelled like they came from the good machine on the executive floor. He'd been Daniel's closest friend here for 2 years now, ever since they'd both pulled an all-nighter fixing a server crash that would have cost the company millions. I'm fine. Yeah, and I'm secretly Batman. Marcus set 1 coffee on Daniel's desk. What happened? Nothing happened. You've been weird for months, and I just saw you walk past Ava Sinclair like she was radioactive. So either she's secretly a supervillain, or you're being an idiot about something. Daniel took a drink of coffee instead of answering. It was too hot and burned his tongue. Marcus pulled up a chair. Talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. Bullshit. I've known you since Sophie was 4 years old. You don't do nothing. The mention of his daughter made something twist in Daniel's chest. Sophie was 6 now, smart as hell, and still had nightmares sometimes about the divorce, about her mother leaving, about whether Daniel would leave too. I made a mistake, Daniel said quietly, and I'm fixing it. What kind of mistake? The kind that could cost me everything, Shas. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, does this have something to do with why you've been avoiding every company event for 3 months? Why you take the stairs instead of the elevator? Why you eat lunch in your car? I have my reasons. Yeah, well, your reasons are going to get you fired. Or worse, they're going to make people think you're guilty of something you didn't do. Daniel's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Marcus lowered his voice. There are rumors, man. People talk. And when the CEO singles someone out for attention and that person suddenly starts acting like she's got the plague, people notice. She hasn't singled me out. She asks about you, wants to know if you're okay, whether you're having problems at home. And you know what that looks like to people who don't know the real story? Daniel felt sick. I'm just doing my job. No, you're hiding. And whatever you're hiding from, it's making things worse. The phone on Daniel's desk rang. He glanced at the caller ID and felt his stomach drop. Executive suite. Don't answer it, Marcus said. Daniel picked up the phone. Mr. Cross, Miss Sinclair would like to see you in her office. Immediately. The assistant's voice was professionally neutral, but there was something underneath it. Curiosity, maybe, or pity. I'll be right there. Boy, ikisi chipi. He hung up and stood, straightening his tie. His hands were still shaking. Daniel, I have to go. Whatever this is about, just tell her the truth. She's tough, but she's fair. Daniel didn't answer. Fair didn't matter when the truth was the problem. The executive suite was on the 23rd floor, a world away from the practical cubicles where Daniel usually worked. Everything up here was glass and chrome and leather, designed to impress investors and intimidate competitors. Ava's assistant, a woman named Caroline who'd probably seen everything and judged nothing, gestured toward the closed office door. She's waiting. Daniel knocked once. Come in. But he opened the door and stepped into Ava Sinclair's office for the second time in 3 months. The first time had been the mistake. She stood by the window, back to him, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Rain streaked the glass in patterns that looked almost deliberate. Close the door. He did. Sit down. I'd rather stand. She turned then, and the expression on her face wasn't the CEO mask she wore for board meetings or investor calls. It was something rawer, frustrated. I'm trying to be patient here, Daniel. I really am. But you're making it very difficult. I don't know what you mean. Don't. The word was sharp. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you don't know exactly what I'm talking about. 3 months ago, you were one of the best analysts I had. You gave presentations that made board members sit up and pay attention. You offered ideas that saved us money and streamlined operations. And then suddenly, overnight, you became a ghost. I'm still doing my job. You're doing the bare minimum. You avoid meetings unless they're mandatory. You won't make eye contact. You act like being in the same room with me is torture. She moved closer, and Daniel forced himself not to step back. So I'm asking you one more time. What did I do? The question hit him harder than it should have, because the answer was nothing. She'd done absolutely nothing wrong. It's not you, he said. Then what is it? It's complicated. I run a billion-dollar company, Daniel. I understand complicated. He looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time in months. Ava Sinclair was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the expensive suits or perfect makeup. It was in the intelligence behind her eyes, the determination in the set of her jaw, the way she commanded attention without demanding it. She was everything he should never have noticed, and he'd noticed everything. You want the truth? His voice came out rougher than he intended. Yes. The truth is, I'm trying to keep my job, and my daughter's stability, and some sense of professional integrity. Ava's expression shifted. What does Sophie have to do with this? Everything. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. She's 6 years old. She's been through a divorce, watched her mother walk out, had to rebuild her entire world with just me. And I promised that I would give her stability, a home, security. That means I can't screw up this job. I can't take risks. I can't. He stopped himself. Can't what? The words were there, right on the edge of saying them. All the things he'd been thinking for months, all the feelings he'd been trying to bury under spreadsheets and quarterly reports, and the very important task of counting tiles. I can't afford to fall for my boss, he said quietly. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain seemed to pause. Ava didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. That's why you've been avoiding me, she said finally. Yes. Because you have feelings you think are inappropriate. I know they're inappropriate. And you think I would fire you for that or use it against you somehow? No. Daniel shook his head. I think I would mess up. I think I'd let myself hope for something that's impossible, and then when it inevitably fell apart, I'd lose everything. My job, your respect, Sophie's stability. So I did the smart thing. I put distance between us before it could become a problem. Ava crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. And it never occurred to you to just talk to me about this? What would I say? Sorry, boss, but you're brilliant and beautiful, and every time you walk into a room, I forget how to think straight, so I'm just going to pretend you don't exist? That seemed like a great career move. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or something else. You think I'm beautiful? The question was so unexpected that Daniel almost laughed. You're a billionaire CEO. You've been on magazine covers. I'm pretty sure everyone thinks you're beautiful. I don't care what everyone thinks. I asked what you think. This was dangerous territory. Every instinct Daniel had was screaming at him to shut up, to take it back, to find a way to turn this into a joke or a misunderstanding. But he was tired. Tired of counting tiles. Tired of taking the stairs. Tired of pretending. I think you're the most compelling person I've ever met, he said. I think you're terrifying and brilliant, and you care about things that matter. I think when you talk about the future of this company, you actually mean it. And I think that somewhere between the quarterly reports and the late-night strategy sessions and watching you demolish a board member who tried to talk over you, I stopped seeing you as my boss and started seeing you as someone I could... He cut himself off. Someone you could... What? It doesn't matter. Daniel, it doesn't matter because it can't happen. You're Ava Sinclair. I'm a single father who works in analytics. We exist in completely different worlds. And even if we didn't, even if somehow the universe aligned and this made sense, I can't risk Sophie's future on something that's probably just what? A stupid crush that'll burn out in 6 months and leave me unemployed. Ava moved then, closing the distance between them until she was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. You think this is one-sided? Daniel's brain stopped working. You think, she continued, her voice low and steady, that you're the only one who's been counting tiles and taking stairs and finding excuses to avoid company events? I asked Caroline to schedule meetings with you. Did you know that? I invented reasons to need your input on projects. I stayed late on Thursdays because I knew you'd be here picking up Sophie from after-school care at 6. I wore this ridiculous perfume because you mentioned once, in passing, that you like jasmine. Daniel stared at her. Why? Because I'm human, Daniel. Because running a company is lonely as hell, and most people who talk to me either want something or they're afraid of me. And you were the first person in years who looked at me like I was just... She stopped, took a breath. Like I was just Ava. You are the CEO of a billion-dollar company, and I know exactly who I am. What I'm asking is whether you know who you are. Because the man I've been watching for the past year isn't someone who runs from things that scare him. He's someone who shows up, who fights for what matters, who rebuilt his entire life around his daughter's smile. That's different. How? Because Sophie needs me. You don't need anyone. The words hung in the air between them, and Daniel immediately regretted them. But Ava didn't look offended. She looked sad. You're right, she said softly. I don't need anyone. I learned a long time ago that needing people just gives them the power to hurt you. But there's a difference between needing someone and wanting them in your life. And A sharp knock on the door cut her off. Ava's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerable woman disappearing behind the CEO mask so quickly, Daniel might have imagined her. Come in, she called. Caroline stepped inside, her expression carefully neutral. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. What kind of situation? HR received an anonymous complaint this morning. It's been escalated to the board. Ava's jaw tightened. What's the nature of the complaint? Caroline's eyes flicked to Daniel for just a second. Inappropriate workplace relationship between executive leadership and a subordinate employee. The words hit like a physical blow. Who filed it? Ava demanded. It's anonymous, but it includes documentation. Photos from company events, timestamps from security logs showing you both in the building after hours, email metadata. Daniel felt the room tilt. I don't understand. Someone's been watching you, Caroline said quietly. Both of you. And they've put together a very convincing case that you've been engaged in a relationship that violates company policy. But we haven't, Daniel started. It doesn't matter what you have or haven't done, Ava cut in. Her voice was ice. What matters is what it looks like. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, Caroline continued. They'll want to speak with both of you, separately. Ava nodded once. Thank you, Caroline. That'll be all. When the door closed, the silence was suffocating. "This is my fault," Daniel said. "I should have been more careful. Should have—" "Stop." Ava held up a hand. "This isn't your fault. Someone did this deliberately. Someone wanted to hurt us." "Who?" "I don't know yet, but I will." Daniel moved toward the door. "I should go. Let you handle this without— Daniel." She said his name like a command, and he stopped. "Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the board decides, I need you to know something." He turned back. "You were right," she said, "about this being dangerous, about the risks, but you were wrong about one thing." "What?" "You said this was probably just a crush that would burn out in 6 months, but I've been running companies since I was 22 years old. I've spent my entire adult life learning to recognize the difference between something temporary and something that matters." She met his eyes. "And this matters." Before Daniel could respond, before he could process what she was saying, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw Sophie's school number. "I have to take this," he answered, and the principal's voice was apologetic but firm. Sophie had gotten into a fight. Could he come pick her up immediately? "I'm on my way." He hung up and looked at Ava. "My daughter, go. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes." Daniel left without another word, his mind spinning with everything that had just happened. In the elevator, he counted tiles on the floor out of habit, but the numbers didn't help anymore. At Sophie's school, he found her sitting outside the principal's office with a split lip and defiance in her eyes that reminded him too much of her mother. "What happened?" he asked, crouching down to her level. "Tommy said you were going to leave me like Mom did." Daniel's heart cracked. "Sophie, I told him he was a liar, and then he pushed me, so I pushed him back." The principal explained the situation with the kind of patience that suggested this wasn't her first playground fight. No suspensions, but both kids were being sent home for the day. Daniel signed the necessary paperwork and led Sophie to the car. In the parking lot, she finally looked at him. "You're not leaving, right?" "Never," he said. "Not ever." "Promise?" "Papa." "Promise." But as he drove home through Seattle traffic, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a promise he might not be able to keep. Because if the board decided he was a liability, if they forced Ava to choose between her company and whatever this thing was between them, he didn't let himself finish the thought. At home, Sophie retreated to her room with the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was a baby. Daniel made dinner on autopilot, mac and cheese, because that's what Sophie always wanted when she was upset. While the pasta boiled, he stared at his phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus, 2 texts from colleagues asking if he was okay, and 1 message from an unknown number. "You should have been more careful." Daniel stared at the message, deleted it, but the words stayed in his head. When Sophie came out for dinner, she ate 3 bites and pushed the bowl away. "Not hungry?" "Dad?" "Yeah, baby?" "Why did Tommy say that, about you leaving?" Daniel set down his fork. Sometimes people say things because they're scared, or because they hear their parents talking and don't understand what it means. "But you wouldn't leave me, even if you had a girlfriend or something." The question caught him off guard. Where did that come from? Sophie shrugged, not meeting his eyes. Katie's dad got a girlfriend, and then Katie's mom said he forgot he had a daughter. "I would never forget I have you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Even if you fell in love with someone? Daniel pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body against his chest. Especially then, because anyone who's worth loving would love you too. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you love someone?" "Bas. Sussy." He thought about Ava standing in her office, admitting she'd been counting tiles too, about the way her voice had changed when she said this matters. "It's complicated," he said finally. "That means yes. That means I'm figuring it out." Sophie pulled back and looked at him seriously. "Is she nice?" "Very nice." "Does she make you happy?" The question hit deeper than it should have, because the answer was yes. Even in the middle of this disaster, even with everything falling apart, the idea of Ava made him happy. "Yeah," he said. "She does." "Then you should tell her. If only it were that simple." That night, After Sophie was asleep, Daniel sat in the living room with his laptop open to the company handbook. He read the section on workplace relationships 3 times. It was clear any relationship between supervisors and subordinates required disclosure to HR and potential reassignment. Relationships between executive leadership and regular employees were strongly discouraged and could result in termination. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Tomorrow's meeting is just the beginning. Walk away now and maybe you keep your job." Daniel stared at the message. Then he blocked the number and pulled up his email. He spent the next 2 hours documenting everything, every project he'd worked on, every meeting, every interaction with Ava that could be misconstrued. By midnight, he had a timeline that proved nothing inappropriate had happened between them. But he also knew it wouldn't matter, because the truth was messier than the timeline showed. The truth was that he had fallen for her, that she'd admitted feeling the same way, that someone had been watching them both and documenting something that technically hadn't happened yet, but absolutely could have. At 1 a.m, his phone rang. Ava's name appeared on the screen. "I shouldn't answer this," he said instead of hello. "Probably not, but I'm hoping you will anyway." Daniel closed his laptop. "Are you okay?" "I've been better. I spent the last 4 hours with the company lawyers. They want me to accept your resignation to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Then I'll resign." "No, Ava, I didn't build this company by backing down when things got difficult. And I'm not going to throw you under the bus because someone decided to play games." "This isn't a game. This is your reputation, your company." "You think I don't know that?" Her voice rose slightly. "You think I haven't been lying awake thinking about all the ways this could destroy everything I've built? But I'm not going to let fear make my decisions, and neither should you." Daniel leaned back against the couch. "What do you want me to do?" "Tell the truth tomorrow. All of it. Don't try to protect me or the company. Just tell them exactly what happened." "And what did happen?" "You fell for someone you worked for, and she fell for you back. And neither of us acted on it because we were both trying to do the right thing. That's not a scandal, Daniel. That's just life." "The board might not see it that way. The board doesn't get to decide how I feel or what I'm willing to fight for." The words settled into Daniel's chest and stayed there. "Sophie asked me tonight if I love someone," he said quietly. Ava was silent for a moment. "What did you tell her?" "That it's complicated." "Is it?" Daniel thought about the tiles he'd been counting, about the stairs he'd been taking, about all the careful distance he'd put between them because he was afraid of exactly this moment. "No," he said. "It's actually pretty simple. I'm just terrified of screwing it up." "Oh, join the club." He could hear the smile in her voice. "I've spent my whole life being terrified of screwing things up. It's exhausting." "How do you do it? Run a billion-dollar company when you're afraid?" "I remind myself that fear is just another data point. It tells you something might matter. It doesn't tell you what to do about it." "And what does the data say about us?" "It says we're probably going to get our asses handed to us tomorrow. But it also says that if we don't fight for this, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives." Daniel heard Sophie's door open and her footsteps in the hallway. "I have to go," he said. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad you finally looked at me." She hung up before he could respond. Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed elephant. "Can't sleep?" "Me neither." He patted the couch next to him. "Want to watch something?" She climbed up and curled against his side. They ended up watching nature documentaries until she fell asleep against his shoulder. Daniel stayed awake, watching penguins march across ice, thinking about tomorrow. At some point, he dozed off. And when he woke up at 6 a.m. with a crick in his neck and Sophie drooling on his arm, he made a decision. He was going to walk into that boardroom and tell the truth. Not because it was smart or safe or likely to save his job. But because Ava was right, fear was just data. And the data said that some things were worth fighting for, even when you were terrified of losing. Daniel got Sophie ready for school, made breakfast, helped her pack her backpack. At the door, she hugged him extra tight. "You look scared," she said. "A little bit. It's okay to be scared. That's what you always tell me." "You're right." Kissed the top of her head. "I love you, baby." "Love you too, Dad." Don't forget your tie is crooked. He fixed his tie in the car, practiced what he was going to say, and drove to Sinclair Technologies with his hand steady on the wheel. The boardroom was on the 23rd floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture that probably cost more than his college education. Daniel had been in here exactly twice before, once for a company-wide presentation, once to accept an award for cost-saving initiatives. Today, it felt like a courtroom. The board members sat along one side of the table, 7 men and women in expensive suits who controlled the fate of thousands of employees. Ava sat across from them, perfectly composed in a navy suit with her hair in that severe bun. She didn't look at Daniel when he entered. Mr. Cross, the board chairman, a man named Richard who'd made his fortune in tech during the 90s, gestured to a chair. "Thank you for joining us." Daniel sat. "I assume you know why you're here." "Yes, sir. We've reviewed the complaint filed with HR. It includes significant documentation suggesting an inappropriate relationship between yourself and Ms. Sinclair. Before we proceed, I want to be clear. This is not an interrogation. We're simply trying to understand the facts." "I understand." "Have you and Ms. Sinclair been engaged in a romantic or sexual relationship?" The question was blunt and impersonal, designed to reduce everything complex to a simple yes or no. "No," Daniel said. "Have you engaged in any behavior that could be construed as inappropriate, given the professional power dynamic?" "No." Richard glanced at the papers in front of him. "No." Richard glanced at, "According to the documentation we received, you and Ms. Sinclair have been in this building after hours together on multiple occasions. Security logs show you both present as late as 10 p.m. I work late sometimes. So does Ms. Sinclair some. Sometimes those hours overlap." The complaint also includes photographs from the company holiday party. You and Ms. Sinclair appear to be having an intimate conversation. We were talking about quarterly projections. One of the other board members, a woman named Patricia, leaned forward. "Mr. Cross, we're not trying to catch you in a lie. We're trying to protect the company's reputation and ensure workplace policies are being followed. But this documentation paints a concerning picture." Then the documentation is misleading." "How so?" Daniel took a breath. This was it, the moment where he either protected himself or told the truth. "Because it's documenting feelings, not actions," he said. "Yes, I have feelings for Ms. Sinclair. Yes, I've tried very hard to manage those feelings professionally. And yes, someone has apparently been watching us closely enough to notice. But having feelings isn't the same as acting on them. And whoever filed this complaint knows that. They're trying to create a scandal where none exists." The room was quiet. "You're admitting you have romantic feelings for your supervisor," Richard said. "Yes. And you see nothing inappropriate about that?" "I see everything inappropriate about it. That's why I've spent the last 3 months avoiding her, taking different routes to my office, skipping company events, doing everything possible to maintain professional distance." Patricia consulted her notes. "And yet the complaint suggests Ms. Sinclair has shown you preferential treatment, extended deadlines, inclusion in high-level meetings beyond your pay grade. Any treatment I've received has been based on my performance. You can review my work." "We have." Richard pushed a file across the table. "Your performance reviews are excellent. Possibly too excellent." "Too excellent?" "Your ratings improved significantly 6 months ago, right around the time these alleged inappropriate interactions began." Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. "My ratings improved because I worked my ass off, because I stayed late and came in early and did everything possible to prove I deserved to be here. Not because of any relationship." "The timing is suspicious." "The timing is coincidental." Richard sat back. "Mr. Cross, I appreciate your honesty about your feelings, but you must understand our position. We have a responsibility to ensure this company operates ethically and without even the appearance of impropriety. If employees believe that romantic involvement with leadership leads to advancement, then maybe you should ask why someone felt the need to manufacture evidence of a relationship that doesn't exist." Daniel's voice was hard now. "Because that's what this is. Someone watched us, documented us. Put together a narrative that makes it look like something happened when it didn't. And instead of asking who would do that and why, you're interrogating us like we're guilty. Patricia exchanged glances with Richard. Do you have any idea who might have filed this complaint? But no. But I'd look at people who had something to gain from damaging Ms. Sinclair's reputation. That's a serious accusation. So is the one being made against us. Ava spoke for the first time. If I may. Her voice was level, controlled. I think Mr. Cross raises a valid point. This complaint was filed anonymously with extensive documentation. That level of detail suggests planning, intent. Someone wanted to hurt us both, or someone wanted to protect the company from a lawsuit, Richard countered. From a lawsuit about what? Two people having feelings they never acted on? The appearance of impropriety is enough. Then every workplace in America is guilty. Ava's composure cracked slightly. People work together. They develop friendships. Sometimes those friendships become something more. The question isn't whether feelings exist, it's whether those feelings compromise professional judgment. And I can assure you mine haven't. With respect, Ms. Sinclair, that's not a determination you can make objectively. But see. Then look at the data. Review every decision I've made regarding Mr. Cross, every promotion, every project assignment, every performance review. If you find evidence of bias, I'll resign immediately. The board members shifted uncomfortably. That won't be necessary, Patricia said, but we do need to establish boundaries going forward. If there is any possibility of a relationship between you two, there isn't, Daniel interrupted, because I'm resigning. Ava's head snapped toward him. What? Effective immediately. I'll submit formal notice this afternoon. Daniel! He looked at her for the first time since entering the room. This is the right thing to do. For the company. For you. Don't I get a say in this? Not anymore. The words came out harsher than he intended, but he couldn't take them back. Because staying meant watching Ava defend herself for something she didn't do. It meant Sophie reading about scandal in the news. It meant everything he'd worked for crumbling anyway, just slower. Richard nodded slowly. I think that's wise, Mr. Cross. We'll prepare a severance package and ensure your departure is handled with discretion. I don't want a severance package, just a standard exit. That's not necessary. It is to me. Daniel stood. The board members exchanged glances, uncertain whether to stop him. Are we done here? He asked. For now, Richard said. We'll reconvene later to discuss next steps. Daniel walked toward the door. Behind him, he heard Ava stand. This meeting isn't over, she said. Mr. Cross is free to leave, Richard replied. I wasn't talking to him. Daniel paused with his hand on the door. He wanted to turn around, wanted to see her face, to know if she was as angry as she sounded, but he kept walking. In the elevator, he counted tiles again. 32 from the boardroom to the elevator. Numbers still didn't help. His phone buzzed before he reached the ground floor. A text from Ava. Don't you dare walk away from this. He didn't respond. At his cubicle, Daniel packed his personal items into a cardboard box. It didn't take long. He'd never decorated much. A photo of Sophie, a coffee mug she'd made him for Father's Day, a couple of pens. Marcus appeared before he'd finished. What the hell are you doing? Leaving. Why? Because it's over, gear. Bullshit. Marcus grabbed the box and set it on the desk. I talked to Caroline. I know what happened in there. And walking away isn't fixing anything. It's just proving whoever did this won. I'm protecting my daughter. From what? From seeing her dad fight for something that matters? Daniel sank into his chair. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. I can't. His voice broke. I can't watch her lose everything because I was stupid enough to fall for someone I shouldn't have. Marcus pulled up a chair. You want to know what I think? Not really. Too bad. I think you're terrified. I think Ava Sinclair got under your skin in a way nobody has since Sophie's mom left. And I think instead of dealing with that, you're running. I'm not running. I'm being practical. You're being a coward. The words hit like a slap. Daniel looked up, ready to argue, and saw only concern on his friend's face. Sophie asked me last night if I was going to leave her, Daniel said quietly. Some kid at school told her I would, and she believed him enough to get in a fight about it. And what did you tell her? That I'd never leave, that she was the most important thing in my world. And was that true? Of course it was true, son. Then why are you teaching her that when things get hard, you give up? Daniel had no answer for that. Marcus stood. Look, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe this all blows up. Maybe you lose your job anyway, but at least you'll lose it fighting for something instead of running away. He left before Daniel could respond. The box sat on the desk, half packed. Daniel stared at the photo of Sophie, 6 years old, with missing front teeth, and that smile that made everything worth it. His phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello? Is this Daniel Cross? A woman's voice, professional and unfamiliar. Yes. This is Jennifer Martinez with Seattle Tribune. I'm doing a story about workplace relationships at Sinclair Technologies, and I was hoping you'd comment on your relationship with Ava Sinclair. Daniel's blood went cold. I don't have a relationship with Ava Sinclair. That's not what our sources say. We have documentation of... He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. Mr. Cross, this is Kevin Chen from Tech Weekly. We're running a story tomorrow about allegations of misconduct at Sinclair Technologies. Daniel hung up and turned off his phone. This was worse than he thought. Someone hadn't just filed a complaint. They'd gone to the press. By tomorrow, this would be everywhere. He grabbed his jacket and walked to the executive floor without thinking. Caroline tried to stop him, but he pushed past her into Ava's office. She was on the phone, pacing by the window. When she saw him, she held up a finger. I don't care what the optics are, she said into the phone. We're not releasing a statement admitting wrongdoing when nothing wrong happened. No. No, I understand the legal implications. Fine. Draft something and send it to me. But I'm not approving anything that throws Daniel under the bus. She hung up and looked at him. You have a lot of nerve showing up here after walking out of that meeting. The press is calling me, Chad. I know. Someone leaked the complaint to at least 3 news outlets. My PR team is doing damage control, but... She stopped, studied his face. You look like you're about to fall apart. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Daniel moved to the window, looking out at Seattle. Rain had started again, turning the city gray. I'm trying to do the right thing here, he said. By quitting? By protecting you. I don't need protection, Daniel. I need... She stopped herself. What? Well, I need you to stop making decisions about us without talking to me. I need you to trust that I can handle this. And I need you to understand that walking away doesn't make this better. It makes it look like we're guilty. Maybe we are. Of what? Having feelings? Last time I checked, that wasn't a crime. It is when one of us runs the company and the other one is disposable. Ava flinched. You think you're disposable? I think I'm a single father with a bachelor's degree and a job I'm good at. You're a billionaire CEO. The math isn't complicated. The math is bullshit. She closed the distance between them. You want to know what the board is really afraid of? They're afraid that if this becomes public, investors will panic. They're afraid that a woman running a company while having human emotions will be judged differently than a man in the same position. They're afraid of losing control. Then maybe I should make it easier for them. By sacrificing yourself? That's not noble, Daniel. That's just sad. The words stung because they were true. I don't know what else to do, he admitted. You could fight. You could stand next to me and tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. And when the chips fall on Sophie, then we'll deal with it together. Fall on... You don't have kids, Ava. You don't understand what it's like to have someone depend on you for everything. He regretted the words the instant they left his mouth. Ava's expression shuddered completely. You're right, she said coldly. I don't have kids. I have a company with 3,000 employees who depend on me for their livelihoods. I have investors who depend on me to make smart decisions. I have a board that depends on me to put the company first. So don't tell me I don't understand responsibility. That's not what I meant. Get out. Ava, I said get out. You want to quit? Fine. Submit your resignation to HR. But don't stand in my office and tell me I don't understand what's at stake. Daniel left without another word. In the parking garage, he sat in his car and let himself feel everything he'd been holding back. Anger, fear. The desperate wish that he'd never looked at Ava Sinclair in the first place, never noticed how she commanded a room, never fallen for someone so far out of reach. His phone, still turned off, sat on the passenger seat. He turned it back on and immediately regretted it. 23 missed calls, 14 voicemails, dozens of texts. One was from Sophie's school. His heart stopped. He called back immediately. "Mr. Cross, this is Principal Davies. I wanted to give you a heads up that there's been some media presence outside the school. Someone trying to ask questions about you, and are the kids safe?" "Yes, of course. We've notified campus security and they've been removed, but I thought you should know." "Thank you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and drove too fast through Seattle traffic. At the school, he found Sophie in the principal's office again, but this time she wasn't defiant. She looked scared. "Dad?" He scooped her up despite the fact that she was probably too old for it. "You're okay." There was a man with a camera. He kept asking if I lived with Ava Sinclair. Daniel's vision went red. "Did he talk to you directly?" "No, the teachers made him leave. But he was yelling questions." Principal Davies handed Daniel a card. "This is the security footage. If you want to press charges for harassment, I do." At home, Daniel made Sophie hot chocolate and let her watch TV while he called a lawyer. The consultation was brief and expensive. Yes, they could file for harassment, but it would take time. Meanwhile, the press would keep digging. When Sophie went to bed, Daniel sat in the dark living room and finally let himself break. His phone rang. "Marcus, you need to see this." "See what?" "Check your email. Someone leaked the entire board meeting." Daniel opened his laptop with shaking hands. The email was from an anonymous account, but the audio file was real. He could hear his own voice, Ava's voice, the board members discussing them like they were corporate problems to be solved. "How did this get out?" he asked. "I don't know, but it's everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, tech news sites. Everyone's listening to Ava defend you." Daniel played the file. Heard Ava's voice saying, "I'm not approving anything that throws Daniel under the bus." Heard her telling the board to review every decision she'd made regarding him. "Daniel?" Marcus's voice pulled him back. "You still there?" "Yeah." "What are you going to do?" He thought about Sophie asking if he'd leave her, about Ava telling him to fight, about tiles and stairs, and all the ways he'd tried to make himself smaller. "I'm going to stop running," he said. He hung up and dialed Ava's number. She answered on the first ring. "Did you hear the audio?" she asked instead of hello. "Yes." "Then you know someone on the board leaked it. Someone who wanted to make this worse." "Ava, I think I know who filed the complaint, and I think I can prove it." "How?" "Come to my place. We need to talk strategy." Every instinct told him this was a bad idea, that going to her apartment would just give the press more ammunition. But he was tired of instincts that kept him safe and miserable. "Text me the address." He called his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd watched Sophie 100 times before, and asked if she could stay over. 10 minutes later, he was driving toward downtown Seattle with the radio off and his hands tight on the wheel. Ava's apartment was in one of those buildings where doormen wore suits and the lobby had actual artwork. She met him in the hallway, still wearing the navy suit from the board meeting, but with her hair down. "Come in." Her apartment was surprisingly spare. Expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, but not much personality. Like she'd hired a decorator and never bothered to add anything personal. "You want something to drink?" she asked. "No. You said you knew who filed the complaint." She pulled up her laptop and turned it toward him. The screen showed a series of emails, metadata highlighted. These are messages sent from a company account to various news outlets, all sent within an hour of the board meeting ending, all containing details that only someone in that room would know. Daniel scanned the emails. Who sent them? Daniel scanned the account belongs to Patricia Vance. She's been on the board for 2 years, very ambitious, wants my job. Why would she do this? Because I'm young and female and she thinks I'm vulnerable. If she can force me out, she positions herself as the logical replacement. Ava closed the laptop. I've been tracking her movements for months. She's been building alliances, undermining my decisions in closed-door meetings, planting doubt about my leadership. Can you prove it to... I can prove she sent the emails. That's enough to get her removed from the board and possibly charged with corporate espionage. But it doesn't solve our problem. Which is? The story's already out there. Patricia might go down, but we're still the headline. Billionaire CEO in inappropriate relationship with employee. The damage is done. Daniel moved to the window. The city stretched out below them, lights reflecting off wet streets. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For dragging you into this, for not being stronger, for... Stop. She moved to stand beside him. You're not dragging me anywhere I didn't choose to go, and you're one of the strongest people I know. I quit my job and ran away from a fight. You tried to protect your daughter. That's not weakness. They stood there in silence, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her next to him. Sophie asked me tonight if the man with the camera would come back, Daniel said quietly. She wanted to know if we had to move, change schools, disappear. What did you tell her? That we didn't run from things that scared us. Sounds like good advice. I'm not very good at following it. Ava turned to face him fully. Then let me help you, because I'm very good at fighting. And I think between the two of us, we might actually win this. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, the way he'd been afraid to for months, and saw not just the brilliant CEO or the beautiful woman, but someone who was just as scared and determined as he was. What do we do? He asked. We go back tomorrow, together. We tell the board exactly what Patricia did. We demand a full investigation, and we make it very clear that we're not backing down. And if they fire us both, then we burn it all down and build something better. She said it with such conviction that Daniel almost believed her. I hurt you earlier, he said. That thing about not understanding responsibility. It was cruel. It was honest. And you weren't entirely wrong. I don't have kids, but I do understand what it's like to have everything riding on your decisions. Tell me. She hesitated, then moved to the couch. Daniel followed. My parents died when I was 19, she said. Car accident. I inherited their tech company, a small thing, maybe 50 employees. The board wanted to sell it, told me I was too young, too inexperienced, too emotional to run it. I fought them for 2 years, built it into something worth keeping, and then I built it into something worth billions. I didn't know. Most people don't. I don't talk about it because I don't want pity. She looked at him. But I understand loss, Daniel, and I understand what it means to protect something that matters more than yourself. So when you talk about Sophie, I get it. I really do. I'm sorry I implied you didn't. And I'm sorry I told you to get out. I was angry. You had a right to be. They sat in silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? Ava said. Anything. When you said you fell for me, was that true? Or were you just saying what the board wanted to hear? The question was so vulnerable that it broke something in Daniel's chest. It was true, he said. Every word. Why? Why did I fall for you? Yeah. Daniel thought about it, about all the moments that had added up to this impossible thing. Because you see people, not just what they can do for you or how they fit into your plans. You see who they actually are. And because you're terrified of being vulnerable, but you do it anyway. And because when you talk about the future, you make it sound possible instead of terrifying. Ava was quiet for so long that Daniel thought he'd said too much. Then she reached over and took his hand. I fell for you, she said, because you never once treated me like I was breakable, and because you love your daughter more than anything in the world, and that kind of love, it's rare, real. They sat there, hands linked, until Ava's phone buzzed. She checked it and swore softly. What? Patricia just released a statement to the press. She's claiming I've been covering up multiple inappropriate relationships within the company. Says she filed the complaint out of concern for corporate ethics. Can she do that? She just did. Ava stood and started pacing. She's trying to get ahead of the story, make herself look like a whistleblower instead of a saboteur. What do we do? We release the emails, show everyone exactly what she did. That'll start a war. Good. I'm tired of being diplomatic. Daniel stood and caught her arm. Ava, think about this. Once you release those emails, there's no going back. Patricia will come after you with everything she has. I know. And it might not be enough. The press might not care who filed the complaint. They'll just care about the story. Then we give them a better story. How? She looked at him with something fierce in her eyes. We tell the truth, all of it. We hold a press conference tomorrow morning. You and me, side by side. We explain exactly what happened, show the evidence of Patricia's manipulation, and make it clear that we're not ashamed of having human feelings. That's insane. Probably, but it's better than hiding. Daniel thought about Sophie, about her asking if they'd have to disappear, about the promise he'd made her. Okay, he said, let's do it. Ava smiled, a real smile, not the CEO mask she wore for cameras. You're sure? No, but I'm tired of being sure and miserable. She squeezed his hand. Then let's be uncertain and honest instead. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Ava drafted a statement while Daniel compiled evidence. By midnight, they had a plan. At the door, Daniel paused. Thank you, he said. For what? For not letting me run away. Thank you for finally looking at me. He left before he could do something stupid like kiss her. At home, Mrs. Chen reported that Sophie had gone to bed without trouble. Daniel checked on his daughter, found her asleep with her stuffed elephant, and then collapsed into his own bed. Tomorrow would either save them or destroy them. He was too tired to figure out which. Daniel woke at 5 a.m. to his phone vibrating against the nightstand. For a disoriented moment, he thought it was a dream, that yesterday hadn't happened, that he still had a job and anonymity and a life that made sense. Then he saw the screen flooded with notifications and remembered everything. He silenced the phone and lay there in the dark, listening to Sophie's soft breathing through the wall. The press conference was scheduled for 9. 3 hours to prepare for the moment that would either vindicate them or confirm every awful thing the media was already saying. His phone lit up again. A text from Ava. You awake? Unfortunately. Come early. We need to prep. What time? Now. Daniel dragged himself out of bed and into the shower. The hot water did nothing to shake the exhaustion that had settled into his bones. He dressed in his best suit, the one he'd worn to job interviews and Sophie's kindergarten graduation, and stood in front of the mirror practicing his opening statement until the words stopped sounding like English. Mrs. Chen arrived at 6:30, still in her bathrobe, but alert despite the hour. You look terrible, she said. Thanks. I'll get Sophie to school. You go do whatever you need to do. Mrs. Chen, if things go badly today, if reporters show up here, I'll handle it. I've dealt with worse than nosy journalists. She squeezed his arm. You're doing the right thing, Daniel, standing up for yourself. He wasn't sure that was true, but he appreciated the vote of confidence. Sophie stumbled out of her room as he was leaving, hair sticking up in directions that defied physics. Dad? Where are you going? It is Work stuff, baby. Mrs. Chen's going to take you to school. Is it because of the cameraman? Daniel knelt down to her level. Kind of. But I'm fixing it, making sure he doesn't come back. By fighting? By telling the truth. Sophie considered this with the seriousness of someone who'd learned early that adults didn't always mean what they said. Will you be okay? I'll be fine. Promise? He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. Promise. The drive to Sinclair Technologies felt longer than usual, every red light a small eternity. Daniel arrived at 7 and found the building already swarming with news vans. Cameras tracked his car as he pulled into the parking garage. A reporter shouted something he didn't catch. Inside, the elevator was mercifully empty. He rode to the 23rd floor and found Ava in the conference room with her legal team, 4 lawyers in expensive suits who looked like they hadn't slept either. Daniel, she stood when he entered. This is Catherine Chen, our head of legal. You've met before. He had, briefly, at a company event. Catherine had the kind of face that gave nothing away, which probably made her very good at her job. Mr. Cross? She shook his hand. We need to go over your statement, make sure we're not opening ourselves up to liability. For the next hour, they dissected every word Daniel planned to say. Catherine kept finding problems, phrases that could be misconstrued, admissions that might suggest wrongdoing, anything that could give Patricia Vance ammunition. You can't say you have feelings for Ms. Sinclair, Catherine insisted. Why not? It's true. Because it implies the relationship influenced professional decisions. But it didn't. Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in situations like this. Daniel looked at Ava, who'd been quiet through most of the prep. What do you think? I think Catherine's trying to protect us. But I also think if we stand up there and give some sanitized corporate statement, nobody's going to believe us. Ms. Sinclair, I appreciate the legal advice, Catherine. I really do. But I'm not going to lie. If that opens us up to liability, then we'll deal with it. Catherine exchanged glances with the other lawyers. It's your company. Yes, it is, us. At 8:30, Marcus appeared in the doorway. The press room is packed, every major outlet plus about 50 bloggers and Twitter journalists. This is going to be a circus. Then let's give them a good show. Ava stood and smoothed her suit, black today, severe and professional. Her hair was up in that bun again, makeup perfect. She looked like she was preparing for battle. Daniel followed her to the press room, aware of the lawyers trailing behind them like anxious parents. The room was indeed packed, cameras everywhere, reporters jammed shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with anticipation and coffee. They took their positions at the podium. Daniel's hands were sweating. Ava's were steady as she adjusted the microphone. Thank you all for coming, she began. Her voice filled the room with the kind of authority that made people sit up and pay attention. I'm going to make a brief statement, and then Daniel Cross and I will take questions. Yesterday, the board of Sinclair Technologies received an anonymous complaint alleging an inappropriate relationship between Mr. Cross and myself. That complaint was immediately leaked to the press, along with selectively edited documentation designed to suggest misconduct. A ripple went through the crowd. Cameras flashed. I want to be very clear. There has been no inappropriate relationship. What there has been is a deliberate campaign by a member of our board to undermine my leadership and damage this company's reputation. Last night, we uncovered evidence that Patricia Vance not only filed the original complaint, but also leaked confidential board discussions to multiple news outlets in an attempt to force my resignation. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Catherine looked like she might have a heart attack. Ava raised a hand for silence. We have provided this evidence to law enforcement and will be pursuing all available legal remedies. But more importantly, I want to address the underlying accusation. Yes, Mr. Cross and I have developed feelings for each other over the past year. No, we have not acted on those feelings in any way that violates company policy. And no, those feelings have not influenced any professional decisions. She turned to Daniel. Your turn. He stepped to the microphone and immediately forgot everything he'd planned to say. The cameras were blinding. The reporters looked hungry. My name is Daniel Cross, he started, and his voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. I'm 32 years old. I have a 6-year-old daughter named Sophie, and until yesterday, I had a job I was good at and respected. Someone shouted a question. Daniel ignored it. 6 months ago, I realized I had feelings for my boss. That scared the hell out of me because I'm a single father who can't afford to lose his job or his reputation. So I did what I thought was the smart thing. I avoided her, took different routes through the building, skipped company events, did everything possible to maintain professional distance. He looked at Ava. She nodded slightly. But someone was watching, someone who decided that having feelings was the same as acting on them, someone who put together a file that made it look like we were having an affair, when the truth is, we've barely spoken for 3 months. And yesterday, when I sat in front of the board and told them the truth, that someone leaked the entire conversation to destroy both of us. Was it Patricia Vance? A reporter shouted. Was it Patricia? Daniel glanced at Catherine, who looked ready to tackle him if he answered. We have evidence suggesting board involvement in the leaks. Beyond that, I can't comment on an ongoing investigation. Are you and Ms. Sinclair in a relationship now? No. Do you plan to be? The question hung in the air. Daniel could feel Ava's eyes on him, could sense Catherine mentally drafting the lawsuit they were about to face. I don't know, he said honestly. What I do know is that I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding, tired of letting other people dictate what I'm allowed to feel. Ms. Sinclair and I have never done anything wrong. We've never violated company policy. We've never let personal feelings compromise professional judgment. What we have done is be human, and if that's a crime, then I guess we're guilty. The room exploded with questions. Ava stepped back to the microphone. We'll take questions now. Keep them professional. For the next 30 minutes, they fielded everything from legitimate inquiries about corporate governance to invasive questions about their personal lives. Ava handled it with the kind of grace that came from years of dealing with hostile investors and skeptical board members. Daniel stumbled through his answers, acutely aware that every word was being recorded and analyzed. Finally, Catherine stepped in. "That's all the time we have. Thank you." They left through the back entrance, escorted by security. In the elevator, Daniel's legs finally gave out. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. "You did good," Ava said. "I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. First press conference is always rough." "How are you so calm?" "Practice. And also, I'm very good at pretending." In her office, they found Richard and two other board members waiting. Richard's expression was somewhere between furious and impressed. "That was quite a performance," he said. "It wasn't a performance. It was the truth." Ava moved behind her desk, establishing territory. "Did you watch?" "The whole company watched. It's streaming live on every news site." "Good. Then everyone knows exactly what Patricia did." "What you're alleging Patricia did, we haven't confirmed. I sent you the evidence 2 hours ago. The emails, the metadata, everything you need to confirm that she orchestrated this entire disaster." Richard sat down without being invited. "Even if that's true, and I'm not saying it is, you just admitted on national television to having an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate." "I admitted to having feelings." "That's not the same thing." "It's close enough. The board is going to have serious concerns about your judgment. Then the board can vote me out. But they better be prepared for the fight, because I'm not resigning." "Ms. Sinclair, I built this company from 50 employees to 3,000. I've tripled our revenue in 5 years. I've navigated 3 recessions and 2 hostile takeover attempts. And you think I'm going to step down because I fell for someone?" Ava's voice was ice. "Find me a male CEO who's been held to that standard. I'll wait." The silence was thick enough to cut. "We're not asking you to resign," Richard said finally, "but we do need assurances that this situation won't continue to damage the company's reputation. Then investigate Patricia. Hold her accountable. Show the world that Sinclair Technologies doesn't tolerate sabotage." "And what about Mr. Cross?" Daniel had been silent through the entire exchange, watching Ava dismantle the board's arguments with surgical precision. Now both Richard and Ava were looking at him. "What about me?" he asked. "Your resignation is still on the table." "No, it's not," Ava cut in. "Ms. Sinclair, with all due respect, this is a board decision. Daniel, do you want to resign?" He thought about Sophie asking if they'd have to move, about the promise he'd made her, about Ava standing next to him at that podium, refusing to back down. "No," he said. "I don't." "Then it's settled. He stays." Richard stood. "The board will be convening an emergency session this afternoon. I suggest you both prepare for difficult questions." "Bu, ishi." When they left, Ava collapsed into her chair and finally let the mask slip. She looked exhausted. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "No, but I will be." "That thing you said about male CEOs was true. I've been fighting that double standard my entire career. I'm not going to stop now." Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Sophie's school. "Mr. Cross, Sophie is asking to go home. She seems upset. Can you pick her up?" His heart sank. "I have to go." "What happened?" "Sophie. She saw something or heard something. I don't know. Go. I'll handle the board." "Ava, go take care of your daughter, Daniel. That's more important than any of this." He left without arguing. At the school, he found Sophie in the nurse's office with red eyes and a tight expression that meant she'd been crying but didn't want anyone to know. "Hey, baby." He knelt down next to her chair. "What's wrong? Everyone's talking about you." Daniel felt sick. "What are they saying?" "That you're on TV, that you're in trouble. Katie said her mom said you did something bad with your boss." "Katie's mom doesn't know what she's talking about." "Did you do something bad?" "No, Sophie, I didn't do anything bad." "Then why is everyone saying you did?" He pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body shake with tears she'd been holding back. "Sometimes people say things that aren't true, and sometimes those things spread before the truth can catch up. I don't want to go back to class. Okay, let's go home. In the car, Sophie was quiet. Daniel tried to find a radio station that wasn't covering the press conference, gave up, and drove in silence. At home, he made grilled cheese and tomato soup, Sophie's comfort food, and they ate on the couch while watching cartoons. She fell asleep halfway through the second episode, exhausted from crying. Daniel moved her to her bed and then sat in the living room with his laptop, pulling up news coverage of the press conference. The headlines were brutal. Sinclair CEO admits feelings for employee. Billionaire's romance scandal rocks tech company. Board member accused of corporate sabotage. But buried in the coverage were some surprising takes. A few reporters were questioning why having feelings was considered scandalous. Others were pointing out the double standard Ava had mentioned. And several were focusing on Patricia Vance's alleged sabotage rather than the relationship. His phone rang. Marcus. "You're trending on Twitter," Marcus said without preamble. "Is that good or bad?" "Atso. Chibai Oshishi." Honestly, mixed. Half the internet thinks you're brave, the other half thinks you're an idiot. But everyone's talking about Patricia now. Her name is getting dragged harder than yours. Good. How's Sophie? Home from school. Kids were giving her a hard time. Marcus swore softly. I'm sorry, man. This shouldn't be affecting her. Everything I do affects her. That's what being a parent means. You need anything? Someone to run interference? Place to crash if reporters show up at your house? I'm okay. But thanks. After they hung up, Daniel pulled up the company directory and stared at Patricia Vance's profile photo. She looked professional and competent, exactly the kind of person you'd trust to serve on a board. Nothing in her expression suggested she was capable of the kind of calculated sabotage Ava was accusing her of. But the evidence didn't lie. The emails were real. The metadata was real. And the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Daniel stared at the message. Then he screenshotted it and sent it to Ava with a note. Got another one. She responded immediately. Forward it to Catherine. We're building a case. The afternoon crawled by. Sophie woke up around 3, still subdued but no longer crying. They played board games and avoided the windows. At 5, Daniel's phone rang with a number he recognized, Ava's direct line. The board voted, she said without preamble. Daniel's stomach dropped. And? Patricia's been removed, effective immediately. They're also launching a full investigation into the leaks. What about us? You're keeping your job, with a formal letter in your file noting that the complaint was investigated and found to be unsubstantiated. And you? Ava was quiet for a moment. I'm on probation. 6 months. Any hint of impropriety, and I'm out. That's not fair. It's better than I expected, honestly. Richard wanted me to step down, but enough board members pushed back that they settled for probation. I'm sorry. Don't be. We won. Maybe not completely, but we won. She paused. How's Sophie? Home. Dealing with it. I'm sorry she's caught up in this. It's not your fault. Feels like it is. Daniel heard exhaustion in her voice, the kind that went bone deep. When's the last time you ate something? I don't remember. Go home, Ava. Get some rest. Can't. I have investor calls all evening. Damage control. You're going to burn out. Probably. But right now I don't have a choice. After they hung up, Daniel made dinner for Sophie. Chicken nuggets and fries, nothing fancy. While she ate, he pulled up his email and found a message from HR confirming what Ava had said. His job was secure, the complaint was unsubstantiated, and there would be no disciplinary action. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt hollow. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Daniel sat on the back porch and let himself think about everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. The board meeting, the press conference, Sophie crying in the nurse's office, Ava's voice when she said they'd won. His phone buzzed. Another text from Ava. You still up? Yeah, can I call? Sure. She called immediately. In the background, he could hear the hum of traffic. She was still at the office. I keep thinking about what you said, she started. About Sophie asking if you'd leave her. What about it? I grew up without parents. They died and left me alone, and it was. She stopped, took a breath. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I spent years building walls so I'd never feel that vulnerable again. But watching you with Sophie, the way you put her first even when it cost you everything, it makes me think maybe I've been doing it wrong. Ishiki sait pataski wasim. Doing what wrong?
Life, relationships, all of it. I thought the answer was to need nothing from anyone. But maybe that's just another kind of prison. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Anyway,
Ava continued, I wanted to tell you that I understand why you tried to protect her, why you kept your distance, and I'm sorry that standing up for us ended up hurting her. She'll be okay. Kids are resilient. Are they? They have to be. Ava was quiet for a long moment. I should let you go. I needed to hear your voice. Make sure you were real. I'm real. Good. That's good. After she hung up, Daniel sat on the porch until the cold drove him inside. He checked on Sophie one more time, found her sleeping peacefully, and finally let himself go to bed. But sleep didn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw camera flashes and heard reporters shouting questions. He thought about Patricia Vance and wondered what would make someone orchestrate that kind of sabotage. He thought about Ava on probation, walking a tightrope for 6 months because she'd refused to throw him under the bus. Around midnight, he gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen, made coffee he didn't need, and stood at the window watching the street. A car pulled up outside, sleek and expensive, completely out of place in his middle-class neighborhood. For a second, Daniel thought it was reporters. Then Ava got out. She looked up at his window, saw him standing there, and raised a hand in a tentative wave. Daniel went to the door and opened it before she could knock. What are you doing here? He asked. I don't know. I was driving home and She looked exhausted and beautiful and completely lost. Can I come in? He stepped aside. In his small living room, Ava looked wildly out of place. Her designer suit and expensive shoes didn't belong among second-hand furniture and Sophie's scattered toys. Nice place, she said. You don't have to lie. I'm not. It feels lived in, real. Daniel moved to the kitchen. Want coffee? Please. He poured 2 cups and they stood on opposite sides of the counter, the silence stretching between them. I shouldn't have come, Ava said finally. Why did you? Because I spent the last 8 hours on investor calls explaining why I'm still qualified to run my own company, and every single one of them, every single one, asked whether I was romantically involved with you. Not whether I was good at my job or whether the company was sound, or whether Patricia's sabotage affected our bottom line. Just whether I was sleeping with an employee. What did you tell them? The truth. That we're not in a relationship. That nothing inappropriate happened. That they should focus on our quarterly earnings instead of my personal life. She set down her coffee cup. And then I got in my car and drove here because telling the truth made me feel like a liar. Daniel's chest tightened. Ava, we're not in a relationship. That's technically true. But it's not the whole truth, is it? What's the whole truth? She moved around the counter, closing the distance between them. The whole truth is that I think about you constantly, that I've been thinking about you for months, that standing next to you at that press conference was the first time in years I felt like someone had my back. You had my back first, and that terrifies me, because I don't know how to do this. How to be vulnerable with someone, how to risk losing them. Daniel reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cold. You're not going to lose me, he said. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'm not going anywhere by choice. Ava looked at their joined hands like she was trying to memorize them. The board's watching us, looking for any excuse to force me out. I know. So we have to be careful. I know that too. But I couldn't spend another night pretending I don't. She stopped herself. Pretending you don't what? Want this? Want you. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Daniel thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. About Sophie sleeping upstairs. About the reporters who would crucify them if they found out. About the 6 months of probation Ava had to survive. About everything they stood to lose. Then he thought about counting tiles and taking stairs and all the ways he'd made himself smaller. I want this too, he said. But not like this. Not sneaking around, not hiding.
Then how?
I don't know yet, but I know that if we do this, we do it right. We wait until the investigation's over, until the probation period ends, until we can stand in front of everyone and not have to apologize for it. Ava's expression flickered, disappointment maybe, or relief. That's 6 months. I know. And you think we can wait that long? I think we don't have a choice, not if we want to do this without destroying everything else. She pulled her hand back and Daniel immediately missed the contact. You're right, she said. You're absolutely right. What? I've spent my whole life being patient, strategic, playing the long game, and I'm tired of it. Me too. But being tired doesn't mean we get to be reckless. Ava laughed, but it sounded sad. When did you get so wise? Around the time I became responsible for a 6-year-old's entire world. They stood there for a moment, close enough to touch, but not touching. I should go, Ava said finally. Yeah. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Thank you, for today, for standing up there with me. Thank you for not letting me quit. I'm still not entirely convinced that was the right call. We'll find out in 6 months. At the door, she turned back one more time. Daniel? Yeah? This waiting thing, it goes both ways, right? You're not going to change your mind? Not a chance. She smiled, and this time it was real. Good. That's good. After she left, Daniel stood at the window and watched her car disappear down the street. Then he went upstairs and checked on Sophie again, just to ground himself in what mattered most. She was still asleep, still peaceful. Tomorrow she'd have to go back to school and face more questions. Tomorrow, the news cycle would churn and people would have opinions. Tomorrow would bring 1,000 new challenges. But tonight, Daniel had told the truth and survived it. That felt like enough. The next morning started with Sophie refusing to get dressed. I don't want to go to school, she said from under her blanket. I know, baby, but you have to. Why? Because hiding doesn't make problems go away. You hid from Ava. The observation hit harder than it should have. Daniel sat on the edge of her bed. You're right. I did. And it didn't fix anything. It just made things worse. Sophie peeked out from under the blanket. Are things better now? Getting there. Is Ava your girlfriend? No? Are you going to be in trouble forever? I hope not. Be in. Sophie considered this. Katie's mom called you a bad word yesterday. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. What word? I can't say it, but it made Mrs. Chen mad. She told Katie's mom to mind her own business. Mrs. Chen is a smart woman. Am I in trouble for punching Tommy? You punched someone else? He said you were going to jail, so I punched him. Just a little bit. Daniel closed his eyes. Sophie, you can't hit people just because they say things you don't like. But he was lying. I know, but hitting him doesn't prove he's wrong. It just gets you in trouble. Then what do? You tell the truth and you walk away. And you let grown-ups handle grown-up problems. Sophie didn't look convinced, but she got dressed. At school, Principal Davies was waiting at the front entrance with the kind of expression that meant someone had complained. Mr. Cross, could I have a word? Daniel sent Sophie to class and followed the principal to her office. We've received several calls from concerned parents, she began. About me. About the situation at your workplace. Some parents are uncomfortable with Sophie remaining in class while... She paused, choosing her words carefully. While your personal life is being discussed in the media. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. Are you asking me to withdraw my daughter from school? No, but I wanted you to be aware of the concerns. My personal life has nothing to do with Sophie's education. I understand that, but perception matters in a school community. So does fairness. Sophie's being punished for something she didn't do. No one is punishing anyone. I'm simply keeping you informed. Daniel stood. Thank you for the heads up. If parents have concerns about my character, They're welcome to speak to me directly instead of gossiping behind my back." He left before Principal Davies could respond. At work, the atmosphere was strange. People who usually said hello avoided eye contact. Others went out of their way to show support, pats on the back, thumbs up, whispered encouragement in passing. Marcus intercepted him at the elevator. "Conference room, now." Daniel followed him and found half a dozen colleagues waiting. "What's this?" "Intervention," Marcus said. "We heard what happened with Patricia. Wanted you to know we've got your back." A woman named Jennifer from accounting spoke up. "We're drafting a letter to the board, explaining that you're a valued member of this team and what happened to you was wrong. You don't have to do that." "Yeah, we do. Because if they can do this to you, they can do it to any of us." Daniel felt something in his chest crack open. "Thank you." "Don't thank us yet," Marcus said. "Half the company still thinks you're having an affair with Ava. This letter might not change anything. But at least you'll know you're not alone in this," Jennifer added. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work that felt surreal after everything else. Daniel attended meetings, reviewed reports, did all the normal things while acutely aware that nothing was normal anymore. Around 3, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then thought about the threatening texts and picked up. "Mr. Cross?" A man's voice, professionally neutral. "This is Detective Harris with Seattle PD. We're investigating the harassment complaint you filed. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Daniel stepped into an empty conference room. "Yes." "We've been reviewing the messages you received. We've also been in contact with Ms. Sinclair's legal team regarding the leaked board recordings and Patricia Vance's involvement. I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Ms. Sinclair. Why? Are you investigating me or the harassment?" "Both, potentially. The circumstances of your complaint intersect with several ongoing investigations." Daniel answered questions for 20 minutes, walking the detective through everything from the first time he'd worked with Ava to the press conference yesterday. Detective Harris took notes without judgment, asking for clarification occasionally, but never editorializing. "One last question," the detective said. "In your professional opinion, was there anything in Ms. Vance's behavior prior to the complaint that suggested she had a grudge against Ms. Sinclair?" Daniel thought back. "Not that I noticed, but I wasn't in board meetings. I wouldn't have seen it." "Fair enough. Thank you for your time, Mr. Cross. We'll be in touch if we need anything else." After the call ended, Daniel sat in the empty conference room and tried to process the fact that he was now part of a police investigation. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Ava. "Detective Harris just called me too. They're taking this seriously." "Good. You doing okay?" "Define okay." "Fair point. Dinner tonight?" "Just as colleagues, nothing improper." Daniel smiled despite everything. "Can't. Sophie duty." "Right. Of course. Another time." "Yeah, another time." That evening, Daniel picked Sophie up from school and found her sitting alone on the playground while other kids played nearby. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, was standing guard with the kind of protective stance that suggested she'd been running interference. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. "Some of the parents requested their children not play with Sophie," Ms. Rodriguez said quietly. "I've made it clear that's not acceptable, but they're kids. They're going to listen to their parents." "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross." Sophie climbed into the car without her usual chatter about the day. She buckled her seatbelt and stared out the window. "Want to talk about it?" Daniel asked. "No." "Want ice cream?" "No." "Want to burn down Katie's mom's house?" That got a small smile. "You can't say that." "Sure I can. I just can't do it." At home, Sophie went straight to her room. Daniel gave her space and made dinner, pasta with the sauce she liked, garlic bread, salad she wouldn't eat. When he called her down, she picked at her food. "Sophie, I need you to talk to me." "About what?" "About what's happening at school. About how you're feeling." She stabbed a piece of pasta. "I feel like everyone hates us. They don't hate us. Katie's mom said you're a bad person who only cares about money and power." Daniel's knuckles went white around his fork. "Katie's mom doesn't know me. She said you tricked Ava into liking you so you could get rich. That's not true. None of that is true.
Then why does everyone believe it? It was the same question Daniel had been asking himself. Why did lies spread faster than truth? Why did people assume the worst instead of waiting for facts?
Because people like drama, he said finally, and because it's easier to believe something bad about someone than to admit you don't know the whole story. That's stupid. Yeah, it is. Sophie set down her fork. Do you love Ava? The question came out of nowhere, direct and disarming. Why are you asking? Because if you don't love her, then Katie's mom is right. You're just using her. Daniel pushed his own plate away. Sophie, this is complicated adult stuff. I'm not a baby. I know what love is. Okay, then yes, I think I might. Might? Definitely. I definitely do. Then why aren't you together? Because sometimes loving someone means waiting until the timing is right, until you can do it without hurting other people. Sophie processed this with the seriousness of someone older than 6. Are you waiting because of me? I'm waiting because of a lot of things, but mostly I'm waiting because Ava and I both agreed it was the smart thing to do. Does she love you? I think so, yeah. Then you should be together. In 6 months, we will be. That's forever. I know, but some things are worth waiting for. Sophie stood and came around the table to hug him. I'm sorry people are being mean to you. Daniel held her tight. I'm sorry you're caught up in this. It's okay. Mrs. Chen says Katie's mom is jealous because she's divorced and lonely, and you're not. Mrs. Chen shouldn't be talking to you about Katie's mom. She didn't. I heard her talking to Mrs. Park. They were loud. Despite everything, Daniel smiled. Go finish your homework. I'll clean up. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Daniel got a call from Catherine Chen. We have a problem, she said without preamble. What kind of problem? Patricia Vance is claiming the emails were fabricated. She's hired a lawyer and is threatening to sue both you and Ms. Sinclair for defamation. Daniel's stomach dropped. Can she do that? She can file. Whether she'll win is another question, but it means this is far from over. What do? We prepare for a legal battle, which means I need you to document everything. Every interaction you've had with Ms. Vance, every communication, anything that could be relevant. I've barely spoken to her. She's on the board. I'm an analyst. Then that's what we'll establish. But I need you to be thorough. After Catherine hung up, Daniel spent 2 hours going through old emails and calendar invites, trying to find any evidence of interaction with Patricia Vance. He found exactly 3. One company-wide email about a policy change, one invitation to a board presentation he'd attended, and one brief conversation in the elevator about the weather. None of it was helpful. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Catherine told you? Yeah, I'm sorry. This should be over. Nothing's ever simple. No, it's not. Daniel stared at the screen, then typed. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. About waiting. Me too. Good night, Ava. Good night, Daniel. He went to bed but didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Patricia Vance's professional smile and wondered what would make someone go to such lengths. Was it really just about wanting Ava's job? Or was there something deeper? Around 2 a.m, his phone rang. An unknown number. Daniel almost didn't answer, then thought about the police investigation and picked up. Daniel Cross? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Who is this? Someone who knows what really happened. Meet me tomorrow at Pike Place Market, 10 a.m. Come alone. Oh, wait. The line went dead. Daniel stared at his phone, heart pounding. This felt like something out of a movie. Mysterious calls, secret meetings. The rational part of his brain said it was probably a trap or a reporter trying to get a scoop. But the part of him that was tired of being passive wanted answers. He forwarded the call information to Detective Harris with a note. Got a weird call. Meeting them tomorrow. Thought you should know. Then he set his alarm for 6 and tried to sleep. Morning came too fast. Daniel woke to his alarm with the kind of headache that meant he'd slept maybe 3 hours total. Sophie was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal she hadn't touched. You look tired, she said. So do you. I had bad dreams. Daniel sat down next to her. About what? About you leaving, like Mom did. He pulled her close, feeling her small frame against his chest. I told you, baby. I'm not going anywhere. You promise? I promise. But even as he said it, Daniel thought about the mysterious phone call and wondered if he was making a promise he could keep. If this meeting at Pike Place went wrong, if it was some kind of setup, he pushed the thought away and focused on getting Sophie ready for school. Mrs. Chen arrived at 8, her usual cheerful self despite the early hour. Daniel had asked her to take Sophie again, claiming work obligations. It wasn't entirely a lie. You're doing that thing where you worry too much, Mrs. Chen observed. What thing? That face, like you're trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't have a solution. Maybe I am. Well, stop it. You'll give yourself wrinkles. She patted his arm. Whatever you're dealing with, just remember, you're stronger than you think. Daniel wished he believed that. At 9:30, he parked near Pike Place Market and walked through crowds of tourists taking photos of flying fish and street musicians. The market smelled like coffee and fresh flowers in the sea. Daniel found a spot near the main entrance where he could watch people come and go. At exactly 10 o'clock, a woman approached. She was maybe 45, professionally dressed in a way that suggested corporate background, with tired eyes and the kind of posture that came from carrying heavy secrets. Daniel Cross? Yeah, she asked quietly. That's me. Walk with me. They moved through the market, weaving between vendors selling everything from handmade jewelry to organic produce. The woman didn't speak until they were outside again, heading down toward the waterfront. My name is Rebecca Walsh, she said finally. I used to work at Sinclair Technologies, in Patricia Vance's office. Daniel's pulse quickened. Used to? I was let go 3 months ago, officially for budget cuts. Unofficially because I saw something I wasn't supposed to. What did you see? Rebecca stopped walking and turned to face him. Patricia has been planning this for over a year. The complaint against you and Ava? That was just the opening move. She has documentation on half the executive team, affairs, financial irregularities, anything she could use as leverage. She's been building a case to force Ava out and position herself as the only viable replacement. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of watching her destroy people, and because what she did to you, going after your daughter through the press, that crossed a line. Rebecca pulled out a flash drive. This has copies of everything. Emails, recordings, financial records showing she's been paying people to dig up dirt on Ava for months. It's enough to bury her. Daniel stared at the flash drive. Why not go to the police yourself? Because I signed an NDA when I was fired. If I come forward, Patricia will sue me into bankruptcy. But you? You're already in the fight, and this gives you the ammunition to win it. What's to stop her from claiming this is fabricated too? The metadata, the digital signatures. I had a forensic analyst verify everything before I made the copies. It's legitimate. Rebecca pressed the drive into his hand. I know you don't know me. I know this seems too convenient, but I've been watching what's happening to you and Ms. Sinclair, and I can't stay silent anymore. Daniel closed his fist around the drive. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Patricia's dangerous. She has connections and resources and absolutely no conscience. Exposing her is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. Rebecca smiled sadly. Fair point. Be careful, Mr. Cross. And tell Miss Sinclair, tell her there are people who believe in what she's built. People who don't want to see it destroyed by someone like Patricia. She walked away before Daniel could respond, disappearing into the crowd of tourists like she'd never been there. Daniel stood on the waterfront, clutching the flash drive and trying to process what had just happened. This could be exactly what they needed. Proof that Patricia had orchestrated everything, that the complaint was part of a larger scheme. Or it could be another trap, more manufactured evidence designed to make them look desperate. He called Detective Harris. I need to bring you something, Daniel said when the detective answered. Evidence related to Patricia Vance. What kind of evidence? The kind I need you to verify is legitimate before I do anything with it. An hour later, Daniel was sitting in a conference room at the police station while Detective Harris and a computer forensics specialist examined the contents of the flash drive. Daniel had called Ava and Catherine on the way over, and both were en route. The forensics specialist, a young woman named Amy, whistled low as she scrolled through files. This is extensive, she said. Financial transfers to private investigators, email chains detailing surveillance operations, recordings of board meetings. If this is real, it's a prosecutable offense. Can you verify it's real? Daniel asked. I can verify the metadata hasn't been tampered with. Whether the content itself is accurate, that'll take more investigation. But at first glance, this looks legitimate. Ava arrived 20 minutes later, still in a business suit, but with her hair down and exhaustion written across her face. She took one look at the computer screen and her expression went cold. How long has she been doing this? Ava asked. According to these files, at least 18 months, Amy replied. She started small, background checks on executive team members, financial audits looking for inconsistencies. Then she escalated to active surveillance. Catherine arrived with 2 more lawyers in tow. They spent the next hour reviewing documents while Amy worked on verification. Daniel sat in the corner feeling like an extra in someone else's movie. Finally, Detective Harris turned to face them. We have enough here to open a formal investigation into Ms. Vance for corporate espionage, invasion of privacy, and potentially fraud. But I need to be clear. This is going to take time. Weeks, maybe months. And in the meantime, she's going to know you're coming for her. Let her know, Ava said quietly. I'm done playing defense. Miss Sinclair, if you use any of this information publicly before we've completed our investigation, you could compromise the case. Then work fast. Catherine put a hand on Ava's arm. We need to be strategic about this. If we release the information prematurely... I know. Ava ran a hand through her hair. How long until you can verify enough to make an arrest? Assuming the metadata checks out and we can confirm the financial transactions. Maybe 2 weeks, Detective Harris said. 2 weeks of Patricia walking around free while we're under investigation. 2 weeks of my company's reputation being destroyed. 2 weeks of Daniel's daughter being harassed at school. I understand your frustration, but no, you don't. Ava's voice was sharp. You don't understand what it's like to build something from nothing and watch someone try to steal it. You don't understand what it's like to be a woman in tech and know that every mistake is scrutinized 10 times harder than a man's. And you definitely don't understand what it's like to fall for someone and have the entire world decide that makes you unfit to do your job. The room went quiet. Detective Harris nodded slowly. You're right. I don't understand those things. But I do understand how to build a case that won't get thrown out on a technicality. So I'm asking you to trust the process. Ava looked at Daniel. He saw the question in her eyes. What do we do? We wait, he said. We let them do their job. And we don't give Patricia any more ammunition. Even if that means 2 more weeks of hell? Even then, Ava turned back to Detective Harris. Fine, 2 weeks. But if you don't have an arrest by then, I'm going public with everything. They left the police station together. In the parking lot, Catherine pulled Ava aside for a hushed conversation while Daniel checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Sophie's school. His heart stopped. He called back immediately. Mr. Cross, this is Principal Davies. We had an incident with Sophie this morning. What kind of incident? She locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. She's not hurt, but she's very upset. We think it would be best if you came to get her. I'm on my way. He hung up and found Ava watching him. Sophie? She asked. Yeah, I have to go. I'll come with you. Ava? I'm coming with you. That's not up for debate. They took Daniel's car because it had a child seat. During the drive, Ava was quiet, staring out the window at Seattle rain that had started falling again. You don't have to do this, Daniel said. Do what? Get involved with the messy parts, the kid parts. Sophie's not a messy part. She's your daughter. But you said yourself you don't have kids. You don't know what this is like. Ava turned to look at him. Then maybe it's time I learned. At the school, Principal Davies met them in the hallway with the maintenance worker holding a screwdriver. We were about to take the door off the hinges, she explained, but Sophie said she'd only come out if you were here. Daniel moved to the bathroom door and knocked gently. Sophie? It's Dad. Silence. Baby, I'm right here. Can you open the door? More silence. Then, so quietly, he almost missed it. Is Ava there? Daniel glanced at Ava,
who looked as surprised as he felt. Yeah, she's here. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack. Sophie peered out with red, swollen eyes.
Hi, Ava said softly. Sophie opened the door wider. Hi? Rough morning? Katie said you were a gold digger who tricks men into giving you money. And then she said my dad was stupid for falling for it. Sophie's voice was matter of fact, but Daniel could hear the hurt underneath. So I told her my dad isn't stupid and you're not a gold digger. And then she said her mom said you're both liars. So I came in here. Ava knelt down to Sophie's level, not caring about her expensive suit on the dirty bathroom floor. Katie's mom doesn't know me, and she doesn't know your dad. So her opinion doesn't really matter. But everyone believes her. Not everyone. Your dad believes in me. I believe in him. And that's what matters. Sophie studied Ava with the kind of intense scrutiny only kids could pull off. Do you love my dad? Principal Davies made a small noise. Daniel opened his mouth to intervene, but Ava spoke first. Yeah, she said. I do. Are you going to leave him like my mom did? No. How do you know? Because I'm not your mom, and because when I make a promise, I keep it. Do you promise to stay? Ava held out her pinky finger. I promise. Sophie linked her pinky with Ava's, sealing what was apparently a binding contract in 6-year-old terms. Okay, Sophie said. Then I guess you can date my dad. Despite everything, the stress, the exhaustion, the absolute insanity of the past week, Daniel felt something in his chest crack open and flood with warmth. Principal Davies cleared her throat. Well, I'm glad that's resolved, Sophie. Why don't you go get your backpack? I think your dad is taking you home for the day. But after Sophie left to collect her things, Principal Davies turned to Daniel. I owe you an apology. Several parents complained about the situation with you and Ms. Sinclair, and I let their concerns influence how I handled things with Sophie. That wasn't fair to either of you. Thank you, Daniel said. For what it's worth, my daughter went through something similar. Different circumstances, but the same kind of public scrutiny. It's hard on kids, but they're more resilient than we give them credit for. Sophie returned with her backpack and took Daniel's hand. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she took Ava's too. In the parking lot, Ava opened the back door of Daniel's car and helped Sophie buckle in like she'd done it 1,000 times. You're good at that, Sophie observed. I babysit sometimes, for my assistant's kids. Caroline has kids? 3 of them. They're terrors, but I like them. Sophie considered this. Do you want kids? Sophie, Daniel warned. What? It's a normal question. Ava smiled. I never really thought about it. I was always too focused on work. But lately, she glanced at Daniel. Lately, I've been thinking maybe I was wrong to rule it out. During the drive home, Sophie peppered Ava with questions. What was her favorite color? Did she like dogs or cats? Had she ever been to Disneyland? Could she do a cartwheel? Ava answered each question with the same seriousness she probably brought to board meetings. Blue. Dogs? But she'd never had one. Yes, when she was Sophie's age. No, but she could do a handstand. Can you show me? Sophie asked. Not while we're driving, but later. Maybe later. At home, Sophie ran inside to change out of her school clothes. Daniel and Ava stood in the driveway, rain falling around them. She likes you, Mai, Daniel said. I like her too. Ava paused, searching for words. She's real. No filters, no games, just honest. That's Sophie. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Ava moved closer, close enough that Daniel could see the exhaustion in her eyes and the vulnerability she usually kept hidden. The thing she asked me, about loving you. You didn't have to answer. I know, but I meant it. Ava, I know we agreed to wait. I know the timing is terrible, but standing in that bathroom, watching your daughter look at me like I had the power to hurt her or protect her, I realized I don't want to waste any more time pretending. Daniel's phone buzzed. He ignored it. We still have to be careful, he said. I know. The investigation, the probation period, all of it, it doesn't go away just because we're tired of waiting. I know that too. Ava took his hand. but maybe we can be careful together instead of separately. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Then again. He pulled it out and saw multiple texts from Marcus, each more urgent than the last. Turn on the news now. Patricia just held a press conference. Daniel pulled up a news site on his phone. The headline made his blood run cold. Former board member claims CEO. Fabricated evidence demands investigation. He clicked the video. Patricia Vance stood at a podium, looking professional and wronged and absolutely convincing. I am here today to defend my reputation against false accusations made by Ava Sinclair and her legal team, Patricia was saying. The so-called evidence they claim to have is fabricated. I have never engaged in corporate espionage. I have never hired private investigators to spy on Miss Sinclair or anyone else. And I certainly never orchestrated any complaint against her or Mr. Cross.
She's lying, Ava said, watching over Daniel's shoulder. I know, but she's good at it.
Patricia continued, what I did do was raise legitimate concerns about Ms. Sinclair's leadership and judgment, concerns that were dismissed and ignored until I filed a formal complaint. Now, rather than address those concerns, Ms. Sinclair has chosen to attack me personally and professionally. I will not stand for this. I am filing a lawsuit for defamation and demanding a full independent investigation into her conduct. The video ended. Daniel and Ava stood in the rain watching water drip off the phone screen. She's getting ahead of the story, Ava said, making herself the victim before we can expose what she actually did. The evidence will prove she's lying. Will it? Or will it just become another he said, she said situation where the board decides it's easier to get rid of both of us? Daniel's phone rang. Detective Harris. I'm assuming you saw the press conference, the detective said. Yeah. We're accelerating the investigation, but I need you both to not engage publicly. Don't respond to her accusations. Don't release any information. Don't give her any ammunition. For how long? As long as it takes. After Harris hung up, Daniel looked at Ava. She was staring at the house, at the modest single story with the small yard and the minivan in the driveway. This is my life, he said. Sophie's school plays and PTA meetings and grocery shopping and bills. It's not glamorous or exciting or anything like your world. I know. And if you're with me, you're signing up for all of it, the messy parts, the boring parts, the parts where my daughter asks you uncomfortable questions, and your company's reputation gets dragged through the mud because of me. Ava turned to face him fully. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I haven't spent the last week weighing every consequence and risk and potential disaster? So why are you still here? Because for the first time in 10 years, I feel like I'm living instead of just surviving. She moved closer. I built $1 billion company, Daniel. I've been on magazine covers and given keynote speeches and had world leaders ask for my advice. And none of it made me feel as real as watching your daughter decide whether to trust me. Sophie appeared in the doorway. Are you guys going to come inside or just stand in the rain all day? They went inside. Ava helped Sophie make hot chocolate while Daniel changed out of his wet clothes. When he came back down, he found them at the kitchen table with mugs and marshmallows, Sophie explaining the intricate social politics of first grade. And then Tommy said his dad said that women can't be CEOs because they're too emotional. And I said, that's stupid because you're a CEO and you're not emotional at all. Ava laughed, a real laugh that Daniel had never heard before. I'm definitely emotional. I'm just good at hiding it. Why? Because people expect CEOs to be tough and serious, especially women CEOs. That's dumb. Yeah, it kind of is. Daniel's phone rang again. This time it was Catherine. The board wants an emergency meeting, she said without preamble, tomorrow morning. They're discussing next steps regarding Patricia's lawsuit and the ongoing investigations. What does that mean? It means they're trying to figure out how to make this all go away. And the easiest solution is usually the nuclear one. Clean house, get rid of everyone involved, start fresh. They'd fire Ava. They'd ask for her resignation, less messy that way. Over my dead body. That's admirable, Daniel, but you don't get a vote. You're not on the board. After Catherine hung up, Daniel sat at the table and told Ava and Sophie about the meeting. They can't fire you, Sophie said immediately. You own the company. I own controlling shares, Ava corrected. But the board can still make my life very difficult. Then fire them. It's not that simple, sweetheart. Sophie frowned. Grown-up stuff is stupid. You're not wrong. That evening, after Sophie went to bed, Daniel and Ava sat on the couch going through the evidence Rebecca had provided. Catherine had sent over copies along with preliminary analysis from the forensics team. Everything checked out. The metadata was clean, the financial records matched bank statements, the recordings were authenticated. This should be enough, Daniel said. Should be, but Patricia's already spinning it as fabricated evidence, and half the board is looking for any excuse to push me out. Why? You've made them all rich. Because I'm young and female and I don't play their political games. Because I refuse to compromise on ethics or values. Because I scare them. Ava leaned back against the couch. Patricia's not the only one who wants me gone. She's just the one who is willing to get her hands dirty. So what do? We fight. We go into that meeting tomorrow and we lay out everything we have. We force them to choose between doing the right thing and protecting their own interests. And if they choose wrong? Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then I walk away, take my shares and start something new, something better. You'd really leave the company you built? I'd leave anything that requires me to compromise who I am. She looked at him. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. Whoa. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, then saw the preview. You need to see this before the meeting. He opened it. There was a link to a video file hosted on an encrypted server. What is it? Ava asked. I don't know. He clicked the link. The video loaded slowly, then began playing. It showed Patricia Vance sitting in what looked like her home office, talking to someone off camera. The complaint is just the beginning, Patricia was saying. Once we establish a pattern of inappropriate relationships, the board will have no choice but to act. Ava thinks she's untouchable because she owns controlling shares, but she's wrong. There are other ways to force someone out. Such as? The voice off camera was male, unfamiliar, public pressure, investor concerns, legal complications. Make it painful enough and she'll resign on her own. And then you take over. And then I restore proper leadership to this company. Someone with experience and judgment. Someone who understands that business isn't about feelings, it's about profit. The video ended. Daniel and Ava stared at the screen in silence. Who sent this? Ava asked. I don't know, but it's dated 3 weeks before the complaint was filed. Which means she planned this whole thing. The complaint, the press conference, all of it. Oh! Daniel forwarded the video to Catherine and Detective Harris with a note. Received this anonymously. Appears to be Patricia Vance discussing plans to force Ava's resignation. Harris called back within minutes. Where did you get this? Anonymous text. I don't know who sent it. We need the original file. The metadata will tell us when it was recorded and potentially who filmed it. How do I get the original if I don't know who sent it? Reply to the text. Ask for it. Daniel typed, Who is this? We need the original file. The response came almost immediately. You'll get the original when Patricia's arrested. Until then, use what you have. And tell Ava she has more allies than she thinks. He showed the text to Harris. Someone inside Patricia's circle is turning on her, the detective said, which means she's losing control of the situation. But it also means she's going to get desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. How do we protect ourselves? Stay visible. Don't go anywhere alone. And for the next few days, assume you're being watched. After Harris hung up, Daniel looked at Ava. She was pale but composed. This is good, right? He asked. This proves she planned everything. It proves she's guilty, but it doesn't prove we're innocent. The board will still see this as a mess they need to clean up. So we show them the video at the meeting tomorrow. Force their hand. Or we give Patricia exactly what she wants. A public fight that makes everyone look bad. Daniel stood and paced the small living room. I'm tired of being strategic. I'm tired of worrying about optics and politics and what the board thinks. Patricia tried to destroy us. She went after Sophie. She manufactured evidence and lied to the press and is now suing us for exposing her. At some point, we have to stop playing defense and just hit back. Ava watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're angrier than I've ever seen you. Damn right I'm angry. Some of us don't have the luxury of staying calm when our kids are being targeted. That's not fair, isn't it? You can walk away from this whenever you want. Start over somewhere else.
But Sophie and I, this is our life, our only life. And Patricia is destroying it for no reason except ambition. You think I don't understand what's at stake? I think you understand it differently than I do. Ava stood. You're right. I don't have kids. I don't have someone depending on me the way Sophie depends on you.
But that doesn't mean I don't care about what happens to her, or to you.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm just tired, scared, angry. I get it, Daniel. I feel all of that too.
They stood on opposite sides of the living room, the distance between them feeling wider than it actually was.
What are we doing?
Daniel asked quietly. Fighting for our jobs, our reputations, our future. What else can we do? We could run, take Sophie and disappear. Let Patricia have the company and the board and all the bullshit politics.
Is that what you want?
Daniel thought about it, really thought about it. The appeal of just walking away, starting fresh somewhere nobody knew their names or cared about their relationship.
No, he said finally. I want to stay and fight. I want Sophie to see that when people try to destroy you, you don't just roll over.
Then that's what we'll do. Ava moved closer, closing the distance between them. Tomorrow, we walk into that board meeting with everything we have. We show them the evidence, we show them the video, and we make them choose. Either they support us or they support Patricia. No middle ground. And if they choose Patricia, then we burn it all down and build something better. She said it with such conviction that Daniel almost believed her. They stayed up until midnight going over their presentation for the board meeting. Catherine sent over talking points and legal disclaimers. Detective Harris called to say the forensics team had verified the video was authentic and recorded 3 weeks before the complaint. At some point, Daniel made coffee. At some point, Ava kicked off her expensive heels and curled up on the couch with her laptop. And at some point, Daniel realized this was what he wanted. Not the billion-dollar company or the public scrutiny or the legal battles, but this. Someone to sit with in the middle of the night, fighting together instead of alone. Around 1 in the morning, Ava's eyes started drooping. You should sleep, Daniel said. So should you. Ils ont. Guest room is upstairs, second door on the left. I should probably go home. You're exhausted, and it's late. Just stay. Ava looked at him for a long moment. You sure? Positive. She followed him upstairs. The guest room was small and mostly empty. A bed, a dresser, nothing personal. Ava stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. Thank you, she said, for letting me stay. Thank you for helping with Sophie today. That thing you said about keeping promises, she needed to hear that. I meant it. I know. They stood in the hallway, close enough to touch, but not touching. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Ava. He went to his own room and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware that Ava was sleeping 20 feet away. It felt both significant and completely ordinary, like everything about their relationship. At 6 in the morning, Daniel woke to the smell of coffee. He found Ava in the kitchen, already dressed in yesterday's suit, making breakfast for Sophie. You cook? He asked. I make passable eggs. Don't get excited. Sophie appeared, still in pajamas, and stopped short when she saw Ava. You stayed over? Sophie asked. I did. Is that okay? Sophie considered this seriously. Did you sleep in Dad's room? Sophie, Daniel started. No, Ava answered. I slept in the guest room. Oh, okay then. Sophie climbed onto a chair. Can I have chocolate chips in my pancakes? We're having eggs, Daniel said. Eggs are boring. Eggs are nutritious. Sophie made a face but accepted the plate Ava handed her. During breakfast, Daniel's phone rang. Marcus. You need to get to the office early, Marcus said. There are reporters everywhere. They know about the board meeting. How? Someone leaked it. My money's on Patricia trying to create more pressure. Great, just great. After Marcus hung up, Daniel explained the situation to Ava. We should go in together, she said. Show a united front. That'll just feed the narrative that we're in a relationship. We are in a relationship. Maybe not officially, but we're in this together. Might as well own it. Sophie looked up from her eggs. Does this mean you're boyfriend and girlfriend now? Daniel and Ava exchanged glances. It's complicated, Daniel said. That's what grown-ups always say when the answer is yes. Sophie returned to her breakfast, apparently satisfied with that logic. Mrs. Chen arrived at 7 to watch Sophie. She took one look at Ava and smiled knowingly but didn't comment. Good luck today, Shol, she told Daniel. And remember, the truth has a way of coming out. Daniel hoped she was right. The drive to Sinclair Technologies was tense. Neither Daniel nor Ava spoke much, both lost in their own thoughts about what the next few hours would bring. When they pulled into the parking garage, they could see news vans lined up outside the building. Ready? Ava asked. No, but let's do it anyway. They walked into the building together. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Security escorted them through the lobby and into the elevator. On the 23rd floor, the board was already assembled. Richard sat at the head of the table with the same neutral expression he'd worn through every crisis. The other board members looked uncomfortable, caught between duty and self-preservation. Catherine was there with her legal team. Detective Harris stood in the corner, officially observing. And at the far end of the table sat Patricia Vance with her own lawyer, looking calm and confident. Thank you all for coming, Richard began. We're here to address the ongoing situation regarding allegations of misconduct, the subsequent investigations, and the lawsuit filed by Ms. Vance. I think it's in everyone's best interest to resolve this quickly and quietly. Quietly? Ava's voice cut through the room. There's nothing quiet about what's happened. Patricia orchestrated a campaign to force my resignation. She manufactured evidence, hired private investigators, and leaked confidential board discussions to the press. And now she has the audacity to sit here and play victim? Ms. Sinclair, Patricia's lawyer interjected. Those are serious accusations that you cannot prove. Catherine opened her laptop. Actually, we can. May I? Richard nodded. Catherine pulled up the video Daniel had received. The room fell silent as Patricia's voice filled the space, discussing her plans to force Ava out. When it ended, Patricia looked pale, but composed. That video is out of context, she said. I was discussing hypothetical scenarios with a consultant. Hypothetical scenarios that you then executed exactly? Ava shot back. I executed nothing. The complaint I filed was legitimate. What you and Mr. Cross chose to do in response, that's not my responsibility. Detective Harris stepped forward. Ms. Vance, we've verified the financial records showing payments to multiple private investigation firms. We have emails detailing surveillance operations. And we have testimony from a former employee confirming your involvement. This goes well beyond a hypothetical discussion. Patricia's lawyer whispered something in her ear. She shook her head. I want immunity, Patricia said suddenly. The room went silent. Immunity from what? Richard asked. From prosecution, in exchange for providing information about others who were involved. Others? Ava's voice was dangerous. Who else was involved, Patricia? Patricia looked directly at Richard. Ask your chairman. Ask him who provided the funding for the private investigators. Ask him who helped craft the complaint. Ask him who stood to benefit if you were forced out. Every eye in the room turned to Richard. His expression didn't change. That's absurd, shit. Is it? Patricia pulled out her phone and brought up an email. Shall I read the messages you sent me? The ones where you said Ava was becoming a liability? That she was too young and too reckless to lead the company through the next phase? That's taken out of context. Then let's provide the full context. Show them every email, every meeting where you discussed ways to undermine her authority, every conversation where you plotted to replace her with someone more, what was the word you used? Malleable. The boardroom erupted. Daniel sat back and watched the carefully constructed facade crumble. Detective Harris stepped forward again. Mr. Richard, I'm going to need you to come with me. We have some questions about your involvement in these matters. Richard stood slowly, his composure finally cracking. This is a witch hunt. This is an investigation into corporate conspiracy and fraud, Harris corrected. You have the right to an attorney. As Harris led Richard from the room, Patricia's lawyer leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. She shook her head again. I'm done protecting people who threw me under the bus, Patricia said to the room. Yes, I filed the complaint. Yes, I hired investigators, but I did it with board approval and funding. I did it because I was told it was necessary to protect the company, and now that it's blown up, everyone wants to pretend they weren't involved. She stood. My lawyer will be in touch regarding immunity negotiations. Until then, I have nothing further to say. Patricia left, her lawyer trailing behind her. The remaining board members sat in stunned silence. Finally, one of them, a woman named Jennifer, who'd always been supportive of Ava, spoke up. I think we owe Ms. Sinclair and Mr. Cross an apology, a significant one. The others murmured agreement. Ava stood. I don't want your apologies. I want your resignations, all of you. Ms. Sinclair, you either knew what Richard and Patricia were doing and said nothing, or you were incompetent enough not to notice. Either way, you've proven you're not fit to serve on this board. Ava's voice was ice. I'm calling for a special shareholder meeting to replace every single one of you, and if you think I don't have the votes, you're about to be very surprised. She walked out. Daniel followed. In the hallway, Ava was shaking. You okay? He asked. I just fired my entire board. But they deserved it. Maybe. But now I have to rebuild from scratch. You've done it before. Ava leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Daniel, the politics, the games, the constant fighting. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Hey. Daniel moved in front of her, forcing her to look at him. Patricia was wrong about everything. You're not too young or too reckless or too emotional. You're exactly what this company needs. Someone who actually gives a damn about doing the right thing. Even if the right thing means burning everything down, especially then. Ava's phone rang. She glanced at it and showed Daniel the screen. It was Caroline. The press is reporting that Richard was taken in for questioning, Caroline said when Ava answered. Social media is going crazy. Investors are calling. We need a statement. Draft something about the ongoing investigation and our commitment to transparency. I'll review it in an hour. After she hung up, Ava looked at Daniel. Want to get out of here? Where? Anywhere that's not a boardroom or a police station or anywhere someone has a camera. They ended up at a small park near the waterfront, sitting on a bench watching boats move across the harbor. It was quiet here, removed from the chaos of the office and the news cycle. Sophie asked me this morning if we were boyfriend and girlfriend, Daniel said. What did you tell her? That it's complicated. Is it? I think we've earned the right to make it simple. Ava leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. They sat there for a long time, not talking, just existing in the same space without cameras or lawyers or board members. Finally, Ava spoke. 6 months feels like a very long time. Yeah, but I meant what I said about waiting, about doing this right. Me too. So we wait. We wait. But sitting there with her head on his shoulder and her hand in his, waiting didn't feel as impossible as it had a week ago. It felt like a promise they were both strong enough to keep. Daniel's phone buzzed as they walked back to the car. A text from Sophie's school, not Principal Davies this time, but Ms. Rodriguez. Sophie had a great day today. Thought you should know. He showed it to Ava, who smiled. See? Things are already getting better. One good day doesn't erase the damage. No, but it's a start. The news broke that evening while Daniel was helping Sophie with homework. His phone exploded with notifications, texts, calls, news alerts. The headline was everywhere. Sinclair Technologies board chairman arrested in corporate espionage scheme. Sophie looked up from her math worksheet. What's espionage? Spying. It's when someone spies on people they're not supposed to. Like the bad guys in spy movies? Kind of like that. Is that what happened to you and Ava? Daniel set down his phone and focused on his daughter. Yeah, some people at Ava's company were spying on us and making up stories to get her in trouble. But you caught them? We did. Sophie went back to her math problem, apparently satisfied. Daniel wished he could process it that simply. By 8 o'clock, every major news outlet was covering the story. Richard's arrest, Patricia's immunity deal, the revelation that multiple board members had been involved in the conspiracy to oust Ava. The narrative had shifted from CEO in inappropriate relationship to female executive targeted by corrupt board. Ava called around 9. You watching the news, what? She asked.
Can't avoid it.
Catherine says we should make a statement. Something about being vindicated and committed to moving forward. Sounds very corporate. It is, but it's what we need right now. She paused.
How's Sophie handling all this?
She thinks it's like a spy movie, which is probably healthier than understanding the actual implications. Smart kid.
She gets it from her dad, Daniel said, then immediately felt stupid for the joke.
But Ava laughed. That real laugh he'd heard in his kitchen. I'm going to remember you said that. After they hung up, Daniel went upstairs to check on Sophie. She was already asleep, her stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. He stood in the doorway watching her breathe, feeling the weight of the past 2 weeks settle into his bones. They'd won, or at least survived. But at what cost? The next morning brought more fallout. 3 more board members resigned before Ava could fire them. 2 major investors called emergency meetings to discuss leadership stability. And the press camped outside Sinclair Technologies turned from hostile to curious, wanting to know how Ava would rebuild. Daniel went to work expecting chaos. Instead, he found something closer to celebration. Colleagues he barely knew stopped by his desk to congratulate him. Marcus brought coffee and donuts like it was someone's birthday.
You're a hero, Sheik, Marcus said. I'm not a hero. I just didn't quit. Same thing in this economy.
Heat. Around 10, Daniel got called to the executive floor. Not by Ava, by Caroline, who explained that several department heads wanted to meet with him about restructuring efforts now that half the board was gone.
Why would they want to meet with me? Daniel asked.
Because you're one of the few people Ava trusts,
and right now, trust is worth more than experience.
The meeting was surreal. Daniel sat in a conference room with vice presidents and senior directors, all of them asking his opinion on everything from new board candidates to revised oversight policies. He felt wildly out of his depth but tried to contribute where he could. Afterward,
Ava pulled him aside. How did that feel? She asked.
Terrifying.
Good. You're taking the director of operations role.
Daniel stared at her. What? The position opened up when Richard was arrested. You're qualified, you understand the company's operational challenges, and people actually like working with you. The job's yours if you want it. Ava, I can't. Why not? Because people will say you're giving it to me because of our relationships. People said we were having an affair when we weren't even speaking. I've stopped caring what people say. She crossed her arms. The question is whether you want the job, not whether it looks appropriate. Daniel thought about it. The promotion would mean more responsibility, better pay, longer hours. It would also mean working more closely with Ava, which violated every instinct he had about maintaining professional distance. But those instincts had gotten him nowhere except miserable and counting tiles. I want it, he said. Good. You start Monday. That's 3 days away. Plenty of time to panic and then get over it. Over the next 72 hours, Daniel's life transformed. HR processed his promotion paperwork. He moved from his cubicle to an actual office with a door and a window. Marcus threw him an impromptu party involving cheap champagne and a cake that said "finally" in frosting. Sophie took the news with her usual directness. Does this mean we're rich now? She asked over dinner. It means I got a raise. We're not rich. But richer than before? A little bit. Can we get a dog? No. Why not? Because I'm going to be working more hours and you're in school all day. A dog needs attention. Sophie stabbed at her chicken nuggets. This is the worst promotion ever. Despite the chaos at work, Sophie's life started normalizing. The kids at school stopped asking about the scandal. Katie's mom apparently got bored with the drama and moved on to gossiping about someone else. Ms. Rodriguez reported that Sophie was participating more in class, even volunteering to read aloud.
She seems lighter, the teacher said during a brief conversation at pickup. Whatever was weighing on her, it's better now. Daniel knew what had changed. The uncertainty was gone. The threat of losing everything had passed. Sophie could just be a kid again instead of worrying about whether her dad was about to disappear. On Friday evening, Ava showed up at the house with Thai food and a bottle of wine. I'm celebrating, Shyam, she announced when Daniel answered the door. And you're celebrating with me. What are we celebrating?
The new board is confirmed. All 7 members are people I actually trust. No more Richard clones plotting to undermine me. Sophie appeared behind Daniel. Ava, are you staying for dinner? If that's okay with your dad. It's okay, Sophie said before Daniel could answer. We're having nuggets, but Thai food is better, but... They ate at the kitchen table, Sophie monopolizing the conversation with detailed explanations of playground politics, and her ongoing feud with a boy named Marcus, who kept stealing her erasers. You should tell the teacher, Ava suggested. I did. She said Marcus probably likes me. And what do you think? Sophie made a face. I think Marcus is annoying and should get his own erasers. After dinner, Sophie convinced Ava to play board games. They ended up on the living room floor with Monopoly spread between them, Sophie taking the game very seriously while Ava kept landing on properties she didn't want. You're terrible at this, Sophie observed. I'm terrible at most games. I'm too competitive. But you're losing, which is making me more competitive. It's a vicious cycle. Daniel watched from the couch, supposedly checking work emails, but mostly just observing. Ava fit here in a way that shouldn't have worked. Her expensive clothes and polished appearance should have clashed with the worn furniture and Sophie's scattered toys. But instead she looked comfortable, like she'd been doing this for years. Around 8, Sophie started yawning. Daniel sent her to get ready for bed, and she went without the usual protests. She likes you, Daniel said when they were alone. The feeling's mutual. She's... Ava paused, searching for words. She makes everything make sense. All the work stress and board drama and public scrutiny, it all seems smaller when I'm helping her bankrupt me in Monopoly. She did destroy you pretty thoroughly. I let her win. She did destroy you. Sure you did. Ava threw a Monopoly hotel at him. He caught it and smiled. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that only happened between people who'd been through hell together and survived. Can I ask you something? Ava said. Always. That first day, when you confessed you'd been avoiding me, what made you finally tell the truth? Daniel thought back to that moment in her office, the fear and frustration and desperate need to just stop pretending. You asked me directly, and I was tired of lying. It's that simple? Most things are simpler than we make them. We just complicate them because simple feels dangerous. Ava moved from the floor to the couch, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. I spent my whole life making things complicated, building walls and strategies and backup plans. And then you walked into my office and said you fell for me. And every complicated thing I'd constructed just collapsed. Good collapsed or bad collapsed? Terrifying collapsed, but also freeing. Sophie's voice called from upstairs. Dad, I need you to check for monsters. Daniel stood. That's my cue. Does she really think there are monsters? No, but she likes the ritual of me checking. Makes her feel safe. That's sweet. Upstairs, Daniel went through the familiar routine, looking under the bed, checking the closet, confirming that the window was locked and nothing scary could get in. Sophie watched with sleepy eyes, already half gone. Is Ava still here? She asked. Yeah. It's real got eat. Good. I like when she's here. Me too, baby. Dad? Yeah? If you marry Ava, does that mean she's my mom? The question caught him completely off guard. Whoa. Nobody said anything about marriage. But if you did, would she be? She'd be your stepmom. Your mom will always be your mom, even if she's not around. Sophie considered this. I think I'd like having a stepmom, especially if it's Ava. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're going to marry her, though, I can tell. Oh, really? How can you tell? Because you look at her the way princes look at princesses in movies, like she's magic or something. Daniel kissed her forehead. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just noticed. Back downstairs, Ava was cleaning up the Monopoly game. Daniel helped, and they worked in silence until everything was packed away. Sophie thinks we're going to get married, Daniel said. Ava froze mid-reach for a stray game piece. What? Well, she asked what would happen if we did, if you'd be her stepmom. And what did you tell her? That nobody's talking about marriage, that we're taking things slow. Good, because that would be... Ava stopped. Would be what? She sat back down on the couch. I don't know. Crazy? Presumptuous? Way too fast? All of those things. But also... She looked at him. Not completely impossible? Daniel's heart did something complicated in his chest. Not completely impossible. I've never thought about marriage, never saw the point. My parents died young, and I built a company instead of a life, and marriage seemed like something other people did. And now? Now I'm sitting in your living room playing board games with your daughter and thinking maybe I had it wrong. Daniel sat next to her, their hands almost touching on the couch cushion between them. We still have 5 months on the waiting period, he said. I know. And a lot can happen in 5 months, Us. I know that too. But, Ava took his hand, but I'm not going anywhere, and I think you should know that. I'm not going anywhere either. They sat like that until Ava's phone buzzed with an investor call she couldn't ignore. She left with a promise to see him Monday at work, and Daniel stood at the door, watching her car disappear down the street. The weekend passed quietly. Daniel took Sophie to the park, helped her with a school project about community helpers, and tried not to think about how much his life had changed in 2 weeks. On Sunday evening, Marcus called. You see the news? Marcus asked. I've been avoiding the news. Patricia took a plea deal. She's cooperating fully in exchange for reduced charges, which means she's going to testify against Richard and everyone else involved. Good. There's more. Apparently she had recordings of everything, every meeting, every conversation, every scheme. The prosecutors have enough evidence to put Richard away for years. Daniel felt something settle in his chest. Not quite relief, but close. It's really over then. The legal part, yeah. The gossip and speculation? That'll take longer to die down, but the actual threat is gone. On Monday, Daniel started his first day as director of operations. His new office was on the same floor as Ava's, close enough that people would definitely notice, but far enough that they couldn't be accused of inappropriate proximity. Caroline stopped by mid-morning with coffee and a knowing smile. Congratulations on the promotion, she said. Thanks. Fair warning, everyone's going to be watching how you and Ava interact, looking for evidence that the relationship influenced the decision. There is no relationship, technically, but everyone knows you're in love with her, and she's in love with you, so just be aware that your professional interactions are going to be scrutinized. After Caroline left, Daniel pulled up his email and found 53 messages that needed responses. He spent the next 3 hours in meetings about operational efficiency and resource allocation and budget projections. It was exhausting and challenging and exactly what he needed. Around 2, Ava stopped by his office. How's the first day? She asked. Overwhelming. Good. That means you're doing it right. She closed the door. I'm scheduling weekly one-on-ones with all department heads. Yours is Thursday at 3. Come prepared to discuss Q2 projections and staffing needs. Very professional. I'm trying this new thing where I separate personal and professional. How's that working? Terribly. I keep wanting to ask if you're free for dinner instead of talking about projections. Daniel smiled. Rain check on dinner? Always. She left before he could say anything else, and Daniel went back to work feeling lighter than he had in months. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Daniel threw himself into his new role, learning the systems and processes and political dynamics of upper management. Sophie continued her slow return to normal, making friends again and bringing home better grades. And Ava rebuilt her company with the kind of focused determination that had made her a billionaire in the first place. They saw each other almost daily, meetings, strategy sessions, the occasional lunch in the executive cafeteria. Always professional, always careful, always aware of the 5-month clock ticking down. But sometimes, late at night when they were both still working, Ava would text him. Nothing inappropriate, just thoughts about the day, questions about Sophie, random observations. And Daniel would respond, and they'd have these conversations that felt more intimate than anything physical could be. 6 weeks after Richard's arrest, the criminal trial began. The prosecution had overwhelming evidence, recordings, financial documents, testimony from Rebecca and other former employees who'd watched Patricia's scheme unfold. Richard's defense was weak, built on claims that he was protecting the company's interests. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Daniel attended when he could, sitting in the gallery watching justice slowly grind forward. Ava testified on day 12, explaining the impact of the conspiracy on her company and her reputation. She was composed and articulate, every inch the CEO, who'd built something remarkable. On day 21, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. Richard was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Patricia, having cooperated with prosecutors, got 18 months in community service. That evening, Ava showed up at Daniel's house again. "It's over," she said when he opened the door. "Yeah, really over. No more investigations, no more trials, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop." Sophie appeared. "Are we celebrating?" "We should be," Ava said, "but I'm too tired to celebrate." "Then let's just have dinner. Dad made lasagna." They ate together, the three of them around the kitchen table like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sophie chattered about her day, Daniel listened, and Ava contributed occasionally with the kind of dry humor that made Sophie giggle. After Sophie went to bed, Daniel and Ava sat on the back porch watching the Seattle skyline light up in the distance.
3 more months, Ava said quietly. "I know. Think we can make it? We've made it this far." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "I keep having this fantasy."
About what happens when the waiting period ends. What kind of fantasy? The boring kind, where we go on an actual date, dinner and a movie maybe. Or a walk through Pike's Place without looking over our shoulders. Just normal couple things. That doesn't sound boring. Right, it does compared to corporate espionage and criminal trials. Daniel laughed. "I could use some boring." "Me too." They sat in silence, comfortable and exhausted and hopeful in a way that felt fragile but real. The next 3 months passed faster than Daniel expected. Work consumed most of his time. The director of operations role turned out to be even more demanding than he'd anticipated. Sophie started 2nd grade with a new teacher who didn't know anything about the scandal. And Ava transformed Sinclair Technologies into something leaner and more focused, cutting dead weight and investing in innovation. They still saw each other almost daily, still had those late-night text conversations, still maintained careful professional distance that everyone saw through but couldn't prove. And slowly, the media interest faded. New scandals emerged. Other CEOs did questionable things. The news cycle moved on, and Daniel and Ava became just another story that people half remembered. On the 6-month anniversary of Ava's probation period beginning, Daniel woke to a text. "We made it." He stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something unlock in his chest. "We did," he replied. "Dinner tonight? Actual date, not work meeting?" "Yes, Mrs." Chen agreed to watch Sophie with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested she'd been waiting for this moment. Sophie, when told about the date, demanded to help pick out Daniel's outfit. "You have to look nice," she insisted, pulling clothes from his closet. "Like fancy restaurant nice. How do you know where we're going?" "Because Ava's fancy. Obviously, you're going somewhere fancy." She wasn't wrong. Ava had made reservations at a restaurant Daniel couldn't afford, even with his promotion. The kind of place that required jackets and had wine lists thicker than novels. He picked Ava up at her apartment, the first time he'd been there since that night months ago when she'd shown up at his door. She answered wearing a black dress that made Daniel forget how to form sentences. "You look—" He stopped, started over. "Wow. You clean up pretty well yourself." In the car, there was a moment of awkward silence. They'd spent months talking every day, but this felt different. Official. Like they were starting something new instead of continuing something that had always been there. "I'm nervous," Ava admitted. "So am I." "That's ridiculous. We've survived corporate espionage and criminal trials. Dinner shouldn't be scary." And yet, the restaurant was exactly as fancy as Sophie had predicted. White tablecloths, candlelight, servers who moved like ghosts. They were seated at a corner table with enough privacy that Daniel could almost forget they were in public. "I don't know what to order," he confessed, staring at the menu. "Everything's in French. The salmon's good. So is the duck. You've been here before?" "Client dinners, investor meetings. Never on an actual date, though, so..." They ordered salmon for Daniel, duck for Ava, wine they both pretended to know more about than they did. And then they sat across from each other with nothing to hide behind anymore. "This is weird, right?" Daniel asked. "We know everything about each other, but also nothing at the same time. I know your daughter's middle name is Rose. I know you take your coffee black. I know you count tiles when you're anxious.
You notice that. I notice everything about you, Ian.
Daniel reached across the table and took her hand.
I know you're terrified of failure. I know you work 16-hour days because stopping means thinking.
I know you're brilliant and driven and you care about things that matter.
That's not everything.
No, but it's enough. The food arrived and they ate slowly, talking about everything except work. Ava told stories about growing up with parents who ran a tech startup from their garage. Daniel talked about Sophie's mother, about the divorce and the aftermath, and learning to be a single parent.
Do you regret it? Ava asked. The marriage?
No, it gave me Sophie. Everything else, the pain, the failure, the starting over, it was worth it for her.
That's beautiful.
It's true. They lingered over dessert, chocolate something that neither of them needed but both wanted. The restaurant slowly emptied around them until they were the last table remaining. We should probably go, Daniel said reluctantly.
Probably.
But neither of them moved. Finally, Ava stood. Walk with me? They left the restaurant and wandered through downtown Seattle, past closed shops and late-night cafes and people heading home from bars. The city felt different at night, quieter, more intimate.
I want to show you something, Ava said. She led him to a building Daniel didn't recognize, used her key card to get in, took him up an elevator to the 15th floor. Where are we?
My first office. Before Sinclair Technologies got big, before the billion-dollar valuations and board meetings. This was where it started. She unlocked a door and flipped on the lights. The space was small, maybe 1,000 square feet, with exposed brick and old wooden floors. Completely empty except for a desk and chair in the corner.
I kept the lease, Ava explained. Even after we moved to the new building, it felt wrong to let it go. Why are we here?
She moved to the window overlooking the city, because I wanted you to see where I came from, before all the complications and expectations and public scrutiny, when it was just me and an idea and a lot of determination. Daniel joined her at the window. You miss it, the simplicity. Sometimes, most of the time I love what I've built, but occasionally I wonder what it would have been like to stay small, to build something sustainable instead of spectacular.
You can still do that. You're only 30.
30 with responsibilities to thousands of employees and investors and stakeholders. I can't just walk away. I wasn't suggesting you walk away, just that you remember you have choices. Ava turned to face him fully. What would you do if you could choose anything? I'd choose this. You, Sophie, a job I'm good at. Maybe add a dog eventually, but Sophie's lobbying pretty hard for that. That's it? No grand ambitions? My grand ambition is to be happy. Everything else is just details. Ava kissed him then, not the careful, tentative kiss of people still figuring each other out, but the kind that came from months of waiting and wanting and finally being allowed. When they pulled apart, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. We should probably take this slow, he said. Probably. Talk about expectations and boundaries and all that mature adult stuff. Definitely. But right now I just want to kiss you again. Then do it. So he did. They stayed in that empty office until well past midnight, talking and kissing and planning a future that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Ava told him about her fears, that she'd be bad at relationships, that she'd disappoint Sophie, that loving someone would make her vulnerable in ways she couldn't control. Daniel admitted his own anxieties, that he wasn't enough for her, that his life was too small and ordinary, that eventually she'd realize she'd made a mistake.
You're overthinking this, Ava said. That's kind of my thing. Mine too. We're going to be disasters together. Probably the best kind of disaster, though. When Daniel finally got home,
it was nearly 2 a.m. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch. He woke her gently, apologized for the late hour, and thanked her profusely. Don't apologize, she said with a knowing smile. Young love deserves late nights. After she left, Daniel checked on Sophie, found her sprawled across her bed with her elephant on the floor, and then collapsed into his own bed fully clothed. His phone buzzed with a text from Ava. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for waiting 6 months. It was worth it. Yeah, it was. Daniel fell asleep smiling, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, He didn't dream about disasters or failures or things falling apart. He just slept, peaceful and content and hopeful about tomorrow. Morning came with Sophie jumping on his bed. "Dad, Mrs. Chen said you went on a date with Ava." Daniel groaned and pulled a pillow over his face. "It's too early for this conversation." "Was it romantic? Did you kiss her?" Sophie. "You did! I can tell because you're embarrassed." Daniel sat up and pulled his daughter into a hug. "Yes, I went on a date. Yes, it was nice. And that's all I'm telling you." "Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now?" "Officially?" "Officially." Sophie whooped and ran from the room, presumably to tell her stuffed animals the news. Daniel's phone rang. "Marcus." "Dude, you're trending on Twitter again," Marcus said without preamble. "What? Why?" "Oh, saw it this morning. Someone spotted you and Ava at that fancy restaurant last night. There are photos." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What kind of photos?" "The kind where you're holding hands and looking at each other like you're in a rom-com. It's actually pretty cute, but also very public." "Damn it." "Relax. The response is mostly positive. People are calling you relationship goals. There's already fan fiction." "There's what?" "Welcome to being a public figure. It's weird and invasive, and you get used to it eventually." After Marcus hung up, Daniel pulled up Twitter and immediately regretted it. The photos were everywhere. Him and Ava at dinner, walking through the city, standing in front of that building. Someone had even captured the moment right before they kissed, though thankfully not the actual kiss. The comments ranged from supportive to creepy to weirdly invested in their relationship. Daniel scrolled until he felt sick, then put his phone down and went to make breakfast. Ava called while he was burning toast. "You saw?" she asked. "Yeah. I'm sorry, I should have been more careful about where we went. You shouldn't have to hide." "No, but apparently privacy isn't an option anymore." "Does this bother you? The attention?" "Masakim." Ava was quiet for a moment. "A year ago, it would have terrified me. The idea of people dissecting my personal life, making assumptions, creating narratives. But now, I'm just tired of caring what strangers think." "So we ignore it?" "We ignore it." But ignoring it turned out to be harder than either of them expected. The photos led to articles. The articles led to interviews requests. And suddenly everyone wanted to know about the CEO and her director of operations who'd fallen in love during a corporate scandal. Catherine called with advice. Don't engage, don't comment, let the story die naturally. But the story didn't want to die. It evolved instead, becoming less about scandal and more about the romance. Think pieces appeared about workplace relationships and power dynamics. Bloggers analyzed their body language. Someone made a TikTok compilation of their cutest moments using security footage and public appearances. It was invasive and surreal and completely overwhelming. Through it all, Sophie remained blissfully unaware of the larger media circus. Her concerns were much more immediate. "When is Ava coming over again?" she asked one evening. "This weekend, probably. Can we go to the zoo?" "You want Ava to come to the zoo with us?" "Yeah, she said she's never been to the Woodland Park Zoo." "That's weird, right? Everyone's been to the zoo." "Yay." So Saturday found them at the zoo, the three of them wandering past elephants and lions, while Sophie provided detailed commentary on every animal's personality and habits. "That giraffe is named Steve," Sophie announced with absolute certainty. "He's shy but friendly once you get to know him." "How do you know his name?" Ava asked. "I just do. Animals tell me things." "That's a useful skill." "Oh." Tolkien. They stopped for ice cream despite the Seattle chill. Sophie got chocolate, Daniel got vanilla, and Ava got something elaborate with caramel and nuts. "You have ice cream on your nose?" "Well," Daniel told Ava. She wiped at it and missed. He reached over and got it himself, his thumb brushing her cheek. Sophie watched with the intensity of a scientist observing a phenomenon. "You guys are gross." "We're sweet," Ava corrected. "Grossly sweet, eh?" They spent 4 hours at the zoo. By the end, Sophie had adopted at least 7 animals she wanted to take home. Ava had learned more about penguins than she ever thought she'd need to know. And Daniel had taken approximately 50 photos of his 2 favorite people making faces at the otter exhibit. On the way home, Sophie fell asleep in the back seat. Daniel looked in the rearview mirror at her peaceful face, then over at Ava in the passenger seat. "This is good." he said quietly. Yeah?
Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. Zoo trips and sleeping children? Family. People who care about each other showing up. The simple stuff that actually matters.
Ava reached over and took his hand. I never thought I'd want this, the domestic thing. But now that I have it, I don't want to let it go. Then don't. It's that simple? It can be, if we let it. That night, after Sophie was in bed and Ava was getting ready to leave, Daniel stopped her at the door. Stay, he said. Daniel, not like that. Just stay. Have breakfast with us tomorrow. See what mornings look like here. The chaos and the burned toast and Sophie refusing to wear matching socks. Ava studied his face. You're sure? I'm sure. So she stayed, slept in the guest room again, but woke up to the smell of coffee and Sophie's laughter. Joined them for pancakes and witnessed Sophie's elaborate explanation for why purple and orange socks absolutely matched, despite all evidence to the contrary. It was messy and imperfect and exactly right. The next 6 weeks unfolded with a rhythm that felt both brand new and comfortably worn in. Ava started spending more nights at Daniel's house, always in the guest room, but increasingly part of the morning routine. She learned that Sophie needed exactly 7 minutes of warning before transitioning between activities, or she'd melt down. That Daniel was useless before his second cup of coffee. That Tuesday nights were for tacos, and nobody deviated from that rule. And Sophie, for her part, started treating Ava less like a visiting dignitary and more like a permanent fixture. She'd drag Ava into her homework struggles, demand help braiding her hair even though Ava was terrible at it, and casually mention, when you live here, as if it were already decided. Sophie thinks you're moving in, Daniel said one evening after she'd gone to bed. They were on the back porch again, their spot now, sharing a blanket against the October chill. I know, Ava said. She told me her plan. Apparently I get the guest room until you guys get married, then I upgrade to your room and she gets the guest room for sleepovers. She's got it all figured out. She does. Question is whether we do. Daniel pulled the blanket tighter around them. I know what I want. I'm just not sure how to get there without screwing it up. What do you want? This. You here. Sophie happy. Work that doesn't make me miserable. Maybe that dog she keeps lobbying for. He paused. And eventually, yeah, I want you to move in. And after that, if we're both still crazy enough, maybe the rest of it. The rest of it being marriage? The rest of it being whatever we decide it looks like. I'm not good at traditional. My first marriage proved that. Ava was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about that, about what it would mean to blend our lives together. You have Sophie and routines and a whole world built around being her dad. I have a company and 16-hour days and employees depending on me. How do we make that work without someone resenting someone else? Honestly, I don't know. But I know we won't figure it out by overthinking it from a distance. So, what are you suggesting? Move in. Not next week or next month, but soon. Let's see what the reality looks like instead of the theory. What about Sophie? What if it doesn't work and she gets hurt? Daniel turned to face her fully. Sophie's already attached to you. Moving in or not moving in doesn't change that. And yeah, if things fall apart, it'll hurt her. It'll hurt all of us. But I'm willing to risk it if you are. Ava leaned her head against his shoulder. You make it sound simple. Because it is. We're just scared, so we're making it complicated. You're probably right. I'm definitely right. Sophie said so. That weekend, Ava brought up the subject with Sophie directly. They were making cookies, a chaotic endeavor involving too much flour and chocolate chips disappearing before they made it into the dough. Sophie, can I ask you something serious? Well, Ava said. Sophie looked up, her face smudged with flour. Okay, Shaw, how would you feel if I moved in here, like lived here all the time instead of just visiting? Sophie's face lit up. Really? You'd really move in? Maybe, if you're okay with it. I'm super okay with it. Does this mean you're going to marry my dad? Eventually, probably. But moving in comes first. Sophie threw her arms around Ava's waist, getting flour all over both of them. This is the best day ever. We haven't even finished the cookies yet. I don't care about cookies. You're staying. Over Sophie's head, Ava caught Daniel's eye. He was leaning against the doorway with an expression that made her chest tight. Looks like it's decided, he said. Looks like. Geht schon super, bomb, geht's. The actual moving process took 3 weeks. Ava's apartment was full of expensive furniture that didn't fit Daniel's modest house, so most of it went into storage. She kept the essentials, clothes, her ridiculous collection of business books, a painting her mother had loved. Sophie helped unpack, providing running commentary on every item. Why do you have so many black suits? Don't you own any colors? I own colors. They're just all variations of black and gray. That's sad. We should take you shopping. Your dad already tried that. I'm a lost cause. Daniel appeared in the doorway of what was now their shared bedroom. I did not try. I succeeded. You own a blue sweater now. That I've never worn. Because you're stubborn, E. Sophie looked between them with delight. You guys argue like an old married couple. We're not old, Ava protested. Or married, Daniel added. Yet, Sophie said with absolute confidence, work became its own kind of adjustment. Dating your boss was one thing, living with her was another. They established rules. No work talk after 8 p.m., no bringing company stress home to Sophie, separate cars to the office so people wouldn't assume they were joined at the hip. But the rules lasted about a week before they started bending them. Because when Ava was stressed about investor meetings, Daniel was the one who could talk her down. And when Daniel was overwhelmed by his new responsibilities, Ava understood in ways no one else could. Marcus found the whole thing endlessly entertaining. You know people are taking bets on when you'll get engaged, right? He said one day at lunch. People need hobbies. This is their hobby. Current over-under is 6 months. I've got money on 3. You bet on my relationship? I bet on true love. There's a difference. You're an idiot. An idiot who's going to be $50 richer when you prove me right. 3 months into living together, they hit their first real fight. It started small, Ava working late again, missing dinner with Sophie again, canceling plans again because of some crisis at work. You said you'd be home by 6, Daniel said when she finally walked in at 9:30. I know. The meeting ran over. They always run over. Because I run a company, Daniel. Meetings run over. Crises happen. You knew this when we started dating. I knew you worked a lot. I didn't know you'd use work to avoid being here when things got hard. Ava stopped mid-motion, her bag still on her shoulder. Excuse me? Sophie had a bad day. She needed you, and you weren't here. I had a board meeting that I couldn't skip. You always have something you can't skip. And I get it. I do. But Sophie doesn't understand that the reason you're not here is because some investor needed reassurance. She just knows you promised to help with her science project, and you broke that promise. So I'm a terrible person now because I have responsibilities? No. You're someone who's scared of getting too close, so you're hiding behind work. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Ava's expression went cold. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Every time things get real here, every time Sophie starts depending on you or I start needing you, you find a reason to work late, to be somewhere else, to maintain distance. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You're terrified of this, of us, of being vulnerable enough to actually need someone. And you're terrified I'm going to leave, so you're pushing me away first, picking fights so when I do leave, you can say you saw it coming. Daniel felt that hit home. Maybe we're both scared. Maybe we are. They stood in the kitchen, the space between them feeling wider than the few feet of tile. I don't know how to do this, Ava said finally, her voice quieter. I don't know how to be the person Sophie needs and run a company and not disappoint everyone. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. I thought I was showing up. Physically, yeah. But emotionally? You've got one foot out the door. Ava sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly looking exhausted. My parents died in a car crash on their way to one of my events, a school play. They were rushing to get there on time and a truck ran a red light, and that was it, gone. Daniel sat across from her, waiting. I was 19, Ava continued, and I kept thinking, if they hadn't been trying to make it to my stupid play, they'd still be alive. If I'd been less needy, less demanding of their time, they wouldn't have been on that road at that moment. That's not your fault. I know that logically, but emotionally, I've spent the last 11 years making sure I never need anyone that badly again. That no one ever has to rush to get to me, that I'm completely self-sufficient. And then you fell for a single dad with a kid who needs you. And then I fell for you, and it terrifies me. Because what if something happens because you were trying to get to me? What if Sophie gets hurt because I asked you to pick her up, or come home early, or just be present? Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. Ava, life is risk. You can try to minimize it, but you can't eliminate it. And if you spend your whole life avoiding connection because you're afraid of loss, you're not really living, you're just surviving. I don't know how to stop being afraid. You don't have to stop being afraid, you just have to do it anyway. They sat in silence for a while, hands linked across the table. I'm sorry, Ava said finally, for missing dinner, for breaking my promise to Sophie, for using work as an escape. I'm sorry for accusing you of not caring. I know you care. I just need you to show it. I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect at it. I don't want perfect. I just want real. Ava stood and moved around the table. Daniel pulled her into his lap, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. I love you, she said. I don't think I've actually said that yet, but I do. I love you and Sophie and this messy, complicated life we're building. I love you too. Even when you're working late and driving me crazy. Especially then? Especially then. They went upstairs together and found Sophie still awake, reading under her covers with a flashlight. You're supposed to be asleep, Daniel said. I was worried about Ava. Did she come home? Ava sat on the edge of Sophie's bed. I'm here and I'm sorry I missed our science project time. It's okay. Dad helped me, but he's bad at volcanoes. I made it work, Daniel protested. It exploded wrong. There's no wrong way for a volcano to explode. Yes, there is. Ava, will you help me fix it tomorrow? I'll be here at 6. We'll fix it together. Sophie hugged her, and Ava held on maybe a little longer than necessary. After Sophie was asleep, Daniel and Ava lay in bed, not touching, both staring at the ceiling. That was our first real fight, Daniel said. Yeah. We didn't do too badly. We're still together. That seems like a win. Low bar, but I'll take it. Ava rolled over to face him. I meant what I said about trying. I know I'm not good at the domestic thing, but I want to be. For Sophie. For you. For us. And I'll try to be more patient, to remember that you're learning and not assume the worst. Deal. They fell asleep like that, facing each other in the dark. And when morning came, the fight felt less like a disaster and more like progress. The months that followed brought their own challenges. Ava missed another dinner because of a crisis in the Tokyo office. Daniel snapped at her for rearranging his kitchen cabinets without asking. Sophie had a meltdown about wanting her real mom, which hurt Ava more than she wanted to admit. But they worked through it, sometimes clumsily, sometimes with more fighting, but they worked through it. And slowly, the three of them became something that looked like a family. Ava learned to delegate better at work, trusting her team so she could be home for dinner most nights. Daniel learned that Ava's need for control came from fear, not criticism. And Sophie learned that love didn't have to be perfect to be real. On a Saturday morning in March, almost a year after that first press conference, Daniel woke to find Ava already dressed and nervous. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing. I need to talk to Sophie about something. Alone. Is that okay? Should I be worried? No, I just need to ask her something. Daniel found them an hour later in Sophie's room, both sitting on the floor surrounded by stuffed animals. Sophie was beaming. Ava looked relieved. What's going on? Daniel asked. Sophie jumped up. Ava asked if she could marry you, and I said yes, but only if I get to be in the wedding, and also we're getting a dog. Daniel looked at Ava. You asked my daughter for permission to marry me? Okay. She's part of this decision. Seemed only fair. And the dog? Was her condition for approval. I've been negotiating with a 7-year-old. I'm not proud of my capitulation. Daniel laughed, the kind of laugh that came from pure joy and disbelief. You haven't actually asked me yet. I know. I wanted to make sure Sophie was on board first. I'm on board, Sophie shouted. Super on board. Ava stood and pulled a small box from her pocket. Daniel Cross, you drive me crazy, and you make me better, and you gave me a family I didn't know I needed. Will you marry me? Daniel looked at the ring, simple, elegant, exactly right, and then at Ava's face, where he saw everything he'd been looking for without knowing it, love and fear and hope and determination. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I will." Sophie cheered and launched herself at both of them, nearly knocking them over. They stood in her small bedroom, the three of them wrapped in an awkward group hug. And Daniel thought about how far they'd come from that day in Ava's office when he'd finally stopped counting tiles. The engagement made headlines again, but this time they were ready for it. Catherine helped them draft a statement that was warm but boundaried. The company released congratulations through official channels. And the media, having exhausted every possible angle on their relationship, mostly moved on to other stories. They got married 4 months later in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Marcus and Caroline as witnesses and Sophie as the very serious ring bearer. No fancy venue, no magazine coverage, just the people who mattered most. Afterward, they had dinner at the same Thai restaurant where Ava had shown up that night with wine and celebration. Sophie wore her flower girl dress and got pad Thai sauce all over it. Ava laughed until she cried. And Daniel looked around the table at his family, the one he'd built by choice and chance and stubborn refusal to give up, and felt complete. The dog came 2 weeks later, a rescue mutt named Charlie who was part lab, part something else, and entirely chaos. He chewed Sophie's homework, knocked over Ava's coffee, and slept on Daniel's feet every night.
"This was a terrible idea," Ava said, watching Charlie destroy his third toy of the week. "You agreed to it," Sophie pointed out, "under duress.
"You blackmailed me." "I negotiated. That's what you call it when you do it." Daniel picked up the destroyed toy and tossed it in the trash. "She's got you there." "Whose side are you on?" "The side that gets to say I told you so when you inevitably fall in love with this dog." It took exactly 3 days for Ava to start sneaking Charlie treats under the table. Work continued to be demanding, but they found a rhythm. Ava brought in a COO to handle day-to-day operations, freeing her up to focus on strategy and actually leaving the office before dark. Daniel built a team he trusted, learning to delegate instead of trying to do everything himself. And on nights when they both had to work late, Mrs. Chen stayed with Sophie, creating a safety net that made the juggling possible. 6 months after the wedding, Ava came home early with news. "I sold the company," she announced. Daniel nearly dropped the pot he was washing. "You what?" "Sold it to a consortium of investors who appreciate what we've built and want to maintain the culture. I'll stay on as an advisor, but I'm stepping down as CEO." "Why?" Ava sat at the kitchen table. "Because I've spent the last year trying to be a wife and a mother and run a billion-dollar company, and I'm exhausted. And because I realized that what I loved about building Sinclair Technologies was the building part. It's built now. It runs without me, and I want to do something new." "What kind of new?"
"I don't know yet. Maybe start something smaller. Maybe invest in other people's ideas. Maybe just take a year off and figure out who I am when I'm not the CEO." Sophie appeared in the doorway.
"Does this mean you'll be home more?" "A lot more." "Can we get another dog?" "Absolutely not." "Worth asking." That summer, they took their first real vacation, 2 weeks in a cabin near Mount Rainier with no internet and no work emergencies. Sophie learned to fish. Ava learned to not check her phone every 5 minutes, and Daniel learned that happiness could be this simple and this profound. On their last night at the cabin, they sat around a campfire watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "I keep thinking about that day in my office," Ava said, "when you told me you'd been avoiding me because you had feelings. How terrified I was." "Of me?" "Of everything. Of wanting something. Of being vulnerable. Of the possibility that life could be more than just work and achievement. And now? Now I'm still terrified, but in a different way. I'm terrified of losing this, of screwing it up, of not being enough for you and Sophie." Daniel took her hand. "You're more than enough, even on the days you're a disaster." "I'm a disaster a lot." "So am I. That's why it works." Sophie threw a stick into the fire, sending up sparks. "When I grow up, I want to fall in love like you guys." "Like us how?" Ava asked. "Like it's hard, but worth it. Like you choose each other even when it's scary." Daniel felt his chest tighten with emotion. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just keep forgetting." They stayed at the fire until Sophie started yawning. Then they walked back to the cabin together, Charlie running ahead through the trees, and put Sophie to bed with stories about constellations and the sounds of the forest settling around them. Later, lying in bed with Ava's head on his chest, Daniel thought about the path that had brought them here. All the fear and fighting and near misses. All the moments when walking away would have been easier than staying. All the choices to be brave when being safe felt smarter. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up. When I was avoiding you. When the board was trying to force you out. When I picked that fight about you working late. You could have walked away any of those times." "So could you." "But we didn't." "No, we didn't." Ava traced patterns on his chest in the dark. "I think that's the thing nobody tells you about love. It's not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone you're willing to fight for. Fight with. Fight alongside." Very philosophical for midnight. "I'm tired. I get deep when I'm tired." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "I love you. Deep thoughts and all." "I love you too. Even when you burn toast." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other in a cabin far from the city and the company and all the things that had once defined them. And in the morning, they woke up to Sophie and Charlie jumping on the bed, demanding breakfast and attention and the start of a new day. It wasn't the life Daniel had planned when he'd first started working at Sinclair Technologies. It wasn't the life Ava had imagined when she'd built her billion-dollar company, but it was theirs. Messy and imperfect and exactly right. And that, Daniel thought as he watched Ava try to wrestle Charlie away from her pillow while Sophie laughed, was what mattered. Not the fairy tale ending where everything was perfect, but the real one where they showed up for each other, day after day, choosing love even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Because the truth was, nothing worth having came easy. Not the career he'd built, not the daughter he was raising, not the marriage he was navigating. All of it required work and patience and the willingness to be vulnerable when every instinct screamed to protect yourself. But the reward, mornings like this one, with the people he loved most making chaos and laughter and memories, made every moment of fear and uncertainty worth it. 2 years after they married, Ava launched a new venture, a foundation supporting young entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. She poured the same intensity into it that she'd given Sinclair Technologies, but with better boundaries and more balance. Daniel took on a role as her partner in the foundation while maintaining his consulting work with tech companies. It was flexible enough to be home when Sophie needed him, challenging enough to keep him engaged, and Sophie thrived. She grew from a scared 6-year-old worried her dad would leave into a confident kid who knew she was loved unconditionally by 2 parents who chose to show up every single day. On Sophie's 10th birthday, they threw a party in the backyard. Kids everywhere, cake being demolished, Charlie stealing hot dogs from the grill. Ava stood next to Daniel watching the controlled chaos. "We did okay?" she said. Yeah, she's happy. We're happy. That's more than a lot of people get." "It's more than I ever expected," Daniel admitted. "What did you expect?" "To survive, to give Sophie a stable home, to not screw up too badly. And now? Now I'm not just surviving, I'm actually living because of you." Ava leaned against him. "We did it together. That's the whole point." Sophie ran over, breathless and grinning. "Dad, Ava, come play capture the flag." "I'm terrible at capture the flag," Ava protested. "That's okay. You're on my team. I'll protect you." They played until the sun set and the birthday cake was gone, and parents started arriving to pick up their kids. And when the last guest had left and the yard was a disaster of discarded plates and decorations, the 3 of them collapsed on the back porch. "Best birthday ever," Sophie declared. "You say that every year," Daniel pointed out. "Because every year gets better." Ava pulled Sophie close. "How did we get so lucky?" "You didn't get lucky. You got me. There's a difference." "She makes an excellent point," Daniel said. They sat there as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. Charlie sprawled at their feet, and Daniel realized this was it. This was the happy ending. Not perfect, not without challenges ahead, but real and earned and wholly theirs. And if someone had told him 3 years ago that falling for his boss would lead to this, to family and love and a life that actually felt worth living, he would have thought they were crazy. But crazy was falling in love when it could cost you everything. Crazy was standing at a press conference and telling the truth. Crazy was choosing to be vulnerable when protecting yourself felt safer. And somehow, that kind of crazy had worked. Not because they'd done everything right. They'd messed up plenty. Fought and doubted and scared each other with their fears and flaws. But they'd shown up. They'd fought for each other instead of against each other. They'd chosen love when love was hard and uncertain and terrifying. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Daniel looked at his wife, brilliant, driven, imperfect Ava, who'd learned to leave work at work and prioritize people over profit. At his daughter, resilient, wise beyond her years Sophie, who'd survived a broken family and built a new one. At the dog currently drooling on his shoe and the messy yard and the life they'd created together. It wasn't the story he'd expected to tell, but it was the one worth living, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.